Hey, welcome back to the Blue Collar Off-Road Podcast, episode 60. I'm Graham. I'm here with Luke and Richie. And Cody was not feeling that great, so he's not here today. And then we've got Tyler Hurlock here as a guest, who a bunch of guys from New England probably know. I don't think I've ever met you, Tyler, but Luke and Richie seem to know you and have been talking about this one for a while. So definitely.
Also, it is the New Year's special.
Oh, it is? Yeah, okay, yeah, when this one comes
Yeah,
out, it'll be
it
New
is.
Year's, so Happy New Year's, everybody. Um, so
Yay.
I think we'll jump right in. I know we were talking before we even started, you're big into uh, racing the Razors and something about 1500 on 42s. I don't know, I guess start with, uh, what got you into all of this and, where were your beginnings? It's always interesting just to hear about that first.
So pretty much started when before I even got my driver's license. My grandfather gave me pretty much an old farm truck that was sitting in the field for, I don't know, 10 years or so. It was a 94 Ram and didn't run or drive or anything like that. I got it running and I ended up going to Bristol Tech my senior year of high school. And, obviously everyone there was a bunch of freaking hillbillies and they had lifted trucks with Super Swamper TSLs on them and all sorts of crazy stuff. Typical like teenage built trucks.
Yep.
So there was some power lines after school. We used to go romping through there. And I remember when I was like, I must have been 15 or 16, right when I got the truck, all I wanted to do is lift it. And obviously you have no freaking money. And I was like trying to piece together a lift kit. I'm like, I don't really need control arms. I'll just buy like 6-inch lift coils. Like, that's obviously all you need for a 6-inch lift. You're on like Rough Country's website, wait until they go on clearance. And I think I ended up buying like a 3.5-inch leveling kit or something ridiculous. Putting it on in school with my teachers telling me, no, don't do that. You're an idiot the whole time. And didn't realize I had to go to Waterbury after that day of school. So I hopped on Route 8 with like this leveling kit with bald mismatched 33s on the truck, and the thing's like shaking like a leaf going down Route 8 with my mom behind me following me. And she's
Sounds
like,
about
just
right.
starts screaming at me about what the hell I was doing. I was doing like 65 and the thing was jolting all over the highway. So I kind of slowed down a little bit and started looking at everything. And like I thought 33s were huge and all this crazy stuff I thought we were doing and building these ugly, huge sheet metal bumpers and all that kind of stuff, just bombing through the mud. Once we started working, me and some of my friends started going to like the local mud bogs they had in Enfield and stuff like that. Got invited to like some private ones we did and just I put a body lift on the truck. I put I think it was a 4 or 5-inch lift I bought off Facebook or Craigslist or something like that. Put all that on, and then trying to think, I think I had some 38s I bought off of, what was that old paper that you, is it Bargain News that we used to use? Like, yeah, so I bought them off Bargain News and put them
Please
on.
tell me they were groundhogs.
No, they were just bald bias ply TSLs. I don't remember how much I paid for them, but way too much. That guy was just counting the bills as I left for sure. And put those things on, and we were going to the mud bogs, just having a blast. We'd go with we started hanging out with Robbie Don. I don't know if you guys know them from Sellington, like Mark Fusco. They started going, and like Woody Baldwin and all those guys. We started going to all the mud bogs. Yeah, so we started going with all those guys, and they were obviously way older. They didn't have much more common sense than we did because they were obviously older and they're still doing freaking mud bogs. But I ended up going to, was it Grunders that was in Torrington, that tractor supply or the tractor place?
Grunders is the one on Route 4.
Yeah, next to like that like car audio place.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think of the timeline. I think this must have been after, either during when I was in college or after college. I bought just barrels from them for tractor tires and essentially made my own wheels. I had Logan Steel cut out centers, welded them in, and then found some They were 12.4 24 tractor tires, which was like a 44-inch tire. And kept doing the mud stuff. And I think I was at Ultimate Off-Road in Meriden. Did you guys go to that at all?
I did. So fun fact about that, the second one, Kish and myself we were working in the pits and helping
John.
Yeah, and we were hanging out with Lich.
What is this wee shit? I got stuck in the fucking parking lot being a parking attendant.
All right.
There was like one person. We were supposed to have a whole bunch of people there from like some volunteer company, and they literally all pretty much called John that morning of the event and said, "Oh, sorry, we can't make it." And there were like 30 people that were supposed to be there to help with parking. And I remember, I just met all of them, and John was freaking out about it. So we were just scrounging any person that we could trust, like even the slightest bit, to help with parking or help with whatever we could.
So I must have gotten lucky because I ended up in the pits.
Yeah. So I was there with my mud truck, and I was literally never had interest in rock crawling or anything like that. And that was the first year, and I ended up meeting Steve Oakes.
Yeah.
So I met Steve that day, and we hit it off pretty good, and we freaking hung out like every single weekend after that. And I ended up going in his Jeep a couple times, rock crawling here and there. And I met Jeff Valerie from Eastern. He was the president at the time through Steve, and he was there too. So kind of started hanging out with all of them a little bit, and all of them were like, mud trucks are freaking... Go ahead.
Sorry, I just remembered Tom Murray, right? He was there too, with that sick FJ buggy.
Yeah, yep, that was his like super old one he had before that green one he built.
Yeah, I thought the green one was the same one, but it was a rebuild.
Yeah, I think he stole some parts off of it and stuff. But I literally paid no attention to any of those guys, so I gave zero shits about rock crawling. And like I said, started hanging out with them a little bit. I'm trying to think. I traded something for a truck. I can't remember what the hell it was, though. I can't remember what it was, but it was a kid in Thomaston. I traded whatever the hell it was for this truck. Oh, it was a Jeep. It was a Jeep Wrangler I got, which I traded a dirt bike I had for. It was a 2.5 YJ. And I traded that for, it was a 95 1500 regular cab short bed. That was a 5.2 5-speed. And that was like going to be my rock crawler. So I started to hang out with all those guys. I'm like, oh, this seems pretty fun. So I got it. Like the first day, the kid's like, oh, the 4-wheel drive doesn't work. Took the diff cover off, and the spider gears were just blown to 1,000 pieces in the front diff. So I got out the old trusty stick welder and welded the front diff right up, and pulled the bed off, and I just went out into my woods. I lived in Burlington on like about 250 acres, so I had trails for my quads and dirt bikes all over the place. Went out there, and I got that thing so wedged in a tree in like 5 minutes in between the cab and the back tires on the side of a hill. And I was like, this is kind of freaking stupid. Had to go get the skid steer and have one of the neighborhood kids come help me get the thing wedged out of there, smashed the cab all in, blew out the rear window. And this is within like 5 minutes of owning the truck pretty much. And so I went back.
Rock crawling.
What was that?
Welcome to rock crawling.
Yeah. So I was like, whatever. Went back. I went to like, I think Logan Steel the next week or something, bought a bunch of 2-inch square tubing, built like a whole tube bed for it, and pulled the seats out, pulled the dash out, just put like those horrible plastic racing seats in it, and just wanted to wheel the hell out of it. I think I ended up welding the rear too, and it was still on a Dana 44 and a 9 1/4. And I wheeled it a bunch at my house. Then we went to a place in Naugatuck. I don't think anyone goes there anymore, but it was called the Beehive.
I heard about that.
Yeah, so I went there with Steve and like Chris DeSanti and Ben Atchison or something his name was, and some other
this is a
kids.
trip down memory lane, and we passed the 5-minute mark, so you're good.
So I went there, and that was like my first like wheeling besides being at my house, and I had literally no idea what the hell I was doing still, and I was trying to follow Chris. He had that yellow WJ at the time, and we were doing pretty good.
Banana con.
Yeah, the banana, and we were doing pretty good, and we camped like this big ledge, and he literally just walked right up it, and me literally have like just coming from mud truck sip to a ledge, and it slides a little bit, and I just stand on the throttle, and it literally just shoots the rear drive shaft right down the hill. And so I go back, load the car up and everything like that, and I end up wrecking the rear axle on it. And I think that was the time I put a 14 bolt in the rear. And kind of all at the same time, I started talking to a bunch of people in Eastern, hanging out with them and going to events and stuff like that. And obviously I wanted to build it a little better. I think I put it was like the newer style 14 bolt that comes with the disc brakes on it already.
Yep.
Put that in the rear. And then I want to say like the next weekend was what was that event that they did in,
RBC?
No, it was the one in Haddam Neck. The one that Corey O'Brien put on. I think it was just at the Haddam Neck Fair. I don't know if you guys ever went to that. It was the Kiss My Diff rock crawl.
Yeah, I never went to that because I didn't ever hang out with those guys. So like, what year was this? Just to put in time frame.
Jeez, I'd have to go back probably like 2013 or 2014 because I still had my old Dodge tow rig then.
Yeah, so at that point in time, we were hanging out with wheeling mass holes in them.
Okay.
So we were going up to Ma Bell, and I was kind of staying away from the Jeep scene and like going to those, not just Jeep scene, but like going to those big events because I just didn't have fun with it, and it was a lot more fun to go and hit mile marker 2, like that old Pottsville Road and Ma Bell, and like I forget what the other property that we went to was, but we went to those 3 properties on a rotation every 2 weeks, and we just did that. And
it seems like we were the exact opposite then, right? So coming from mud bogs and stuff, I didn't know like trail riding and shit like that. I just knew like events. So that's all I ever looked for was on, Facebook. You find an event, sign up for it, go there that day. I mean, we did like Buell's Mud Bog. There was one in Enfield, like Ellington. I think we did some in Mass at, there was a farm up there that had awesome events.
Wojacks?
Yeah, I think it was that.
Yeah,
it's the one that, they closed down after like doing it for like 2 or 3 years.
So, I guess I'm still technically a member, but that was one of the spots that helped to form Backyard Built. They used to go up there.
That was our initial spot where we'd meet up.
So that was like, that wasn't too far over the border, right? Like half hour or so from Connecticut.
Yeah,
like 45 minutes maybe. They had like a mud bog and rock crawl event there, and they had like a little farm stand and stuff selling ice cream and shit.
It sounds right.
Okay, yeah. So that
could be anything, but that sounds like what sort of events they'd throw. So
yeah, they had like truck dynos there and stuff. So again, like I was kind of in club wheeling a little bit then, but not very much. Like I would just go if Steve invited me or someone. So I was at that event, and it was the last year they were doing the rock crawl, and they were doing like the rock crawl competitions. And I actually just came from Vermonster, and I think I got second place in Vermonster in the rock crawl in my truck.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like all pumped up, and I had no cage in it. I had no doors. Like it was literally just the shell of a Dodge with a 2-bed. And I think at that time it was on 1 tons with coil springs in the front, leaf springs in the rear. on 39.5 IROX on 15-inch DIY beadlocks. And I don't know if you guys know who Todd Gerard is. He's got like a big lime green mud truck. So he was there, and I started talking to him, and we kind of had some mutual friends. And he's like, dude, like, let's make this thing like a tube buggy. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't know how to do any of that shit. I don't know how to bend tube or weld all that good or anything like that. And he's like, well, I don't either really, but I have everything to do it. So I started hanging out with him a whole bunch, and literally one day we just went, I had a construction garage I was able to use, and he came over and we literally just ripped everything off that truck. Ripped the cab off, the bed off, everything, and just started bending tube. And not even looking back now, I was like, we were both freaking idiots. But we were like, let's make it nice and wide. So we made the thing so there's like 1.5 feet of clearance between like your left leg and the door.
Wow.
So like the thing was so wide for literally no reason. And like, we were just building it, and like we had no idea. One of our friends, Kent Carbo, he lived up in New Hampshire. He started coming down on the weekends, and he worked for like a custom fab shop up there, which built like insane vehicles. So he'd come down and help us, and he was a super talented welder. So he was welding the whole thing for us as we were bending tube and notching and everything like that. And we finished it, and we were so pumped. And like the day after we finished it, we loaded it up and went to Tennessee for the first time. And so like I literally had no seat time in this thing. Like I think I drove it up and down the street a couple times and around my property. At the same time of doing all that tube work, really, I three-linked the front, and I got 16-inch big shocks, coilovers. Like remote reservoirs. But again, I still had no idea what the fuck I was doing, just kind of winging all of it, trying to find the cheapest stuff. Went down, I think I had to change spring rates like right before I left or something. It was too soft or too firm, I can't remember. Went down there with Kevin. We went to go load both his buggy and my buggy on the trailer, and realized my trailer was too short. It was a 24-foot PJ I just bought, like pretty much for this trip. And we ended up having to cut the whole front of it off and make it longer. So we ended up having to back his tires like over the front of the trailer and made like these big saddles for him to sit in. And then we were like literally kissing our front bumpers and strapped everything down. And it was Kevin, myself, I think Mike Kalo came with us, and I think maybe Kevin's girlfriend, Jess. And we just went down there, kind of had no idea what the hell we were doing. That's when Kev was still on 37-inch reds and a 44 and a 9-inch and all that good stuff. And went down there, and it was like, trying to think of who we met down there that first year. I think it was Marty Emerson and all those guys, like Phil. I think it's Phil Davis. Marty. Yeah, so
talk to him.
That dude's a fucking absolute maniac. So we met all of them down there. I think there was some other guys, I can't remember. It was a while ago now who we were down there with. Actually, Litch was down there that year, I'm pretty sure. I think Litch and Tom came down that year also. Or maybe they were there like the week before.
No, they were there for that event because so like, not to divert too far, but we're going to go down the rabbit hole. We met you when I had the ZJ buggy in progress, and it was at that RBC Bearings. You remember how they would throw that event there?
Shit, yeah.
You had the blue rig. Woody was there, and they were doing the car crush. And
that's when Litch just finished his LS swap.
Yeah, and he's fucking annihilated the drive shaft.
Yeah. I have a picture of him like a 12 o'clock wheelie trying to get up on that car.
Not an iota in that building.
That's back when you still had your cab on the crawler, and it was just a tube bed.
Yep.
And you had the Dodge 60 with what was it? The Tractor Supply Heim joints on the upper control arms.
I never had track. That was Kev that had Tractor Supply.
That was Kev? Okay. So then we must have met him at that as well. But it was just like this.
No, that was Lich. Lich always had the sketchiest shit and would beat the fuck out of it. And it would, like, I mean, it broke, but he literally would have like 3/4 of an inch of slop. I mean, it was the Tractor Supply, like 3-point hitch that you'd put on like an implement was what his upper links are. And I'm like, how the fuck does this thing even hold together?
43s.
Yeah.
Triangulated 4 links front and rear. And this dude would stand on it to the point that he would get it to like 12 o'clock.
Yeah.
He hopped from this 12 o'clock wheelie and sent a fucking pinion out of a 14 bolt.
Yeah, with like all these people who have no idea what they're even looking at to begin with. It's just like it was advertised like a car show with like car crushing or some shit. And you have like all of our hoopties there that are barely running. Like I remember Lich got yelled at because he parked on my tire and all of his gear oil just started dumping on the ground. So they had to like dust the axle tubes with rags and shit because it was just pouring oil in the parking lot and everyone was bitching about it.
Fucking miss that dude. He was such a good fucking guy. I remember he went to Roush right after he got it back together from the LS swap and then blown the rear end up. And he blew the fucking SM465 bell housing, cracked it clean in half.
Yeah, none of those things are that strong. But that thing was always, like, again, with the tractor links, he wheeled like the most out of a lot of people in New England, and that thing had so many miles on it. But so after he passed away, me and one of my friends went and got it and picked it up and brought it to the Great American Jeep Rally. I think it was the year after he passed away. And I can't remember if it didn't start or there was some issue with it. So I went and picked it up and worked on it for a couple of days and brought it out there. And dude, driving that thing, I'm like, how did this dude even freaking wheel in the woods with this thing? Because it body rolled. I mean, you just let the clutch out and it flopped on its side. And I'm like, this guy was just driving this thing like a maniac, and it's sketchy going down the parking lot in first gear in this thing. Like the suspension was so jacked up on it, but you would never know, like, unless you got in there, because he just was so composed in that thing. He had so much seat time, like he knew that it was going to unload, like hitting a speed bump.
That dude was something else, man. Fucking one of the best people I ever met. Not to get all sappy and shit, but he and a couple other dudes, you know, Kevin, were the reason that I went from, like, I mentioned I was wheeling with wheeling mass holes. I don't know if you remember my old Jeep, but it had the, it was a 98 with a Bronco 44 and an 8 1/4 in it. And so right after meeting Lich, I blew the rear end at Topless for Tatas with the wheel and mass holes, and I launched the spider gears clean, like dislodging a solid diff cover on the.
Was that an XJ?
Yeah, it was an XJ, black XJ that was around Torrington and Harwinton and Burlington.
I tried to stay out of Torrington as much as I could.
Don't blame you.
It's home.
I honestly don't remember meeting you until you had like your yellow conglomerate thing there.
The Ducky.
Ducky, is that what it was called?
Yep, Ducky.
Yeah, which I know you guys don't talk about it, but did you see that freaking JK finally got out of there yesterday or the day before?
Oh, fuck yeah, dude.
Oh my god, that's what 6
JK?
years overdue. Mike Savesky's the orange JK.
You know what? Fuck it. I feel bad for that guy, like really bad for that guy, because I got a rushed piece of shit. I hope he didn't get a rushed piece of shit because it was there for fucking 6 years.
Yeah, there's definitely no rush. So, funny thing, right? That first time I went wheeling, like, out of my house at the Beehive, I met Mike. He was there in, like, the group of guys from Naugatuck. and he was literally telling me about like he had some old Jeep, but he was going to buy that JK brand new. And that was literally the first time I've ever been wheeling, and just today or yesterday, whatever it was, he got it back. Like he literally hasn't even driven it since then. And that was my first time wheeling when I was probably 17, and I'm 27 now.
Wow.
Dude,
Yeah, that's a long time to wait.
rough.
It's wild.
Fucking god awful.
Yeah.
And, you know, I gotta say thank you, because you're part of the reason that my new rig that I call Barry is where it is. Like, you know, it was air shocks and an anti-rock for a set of tons, and that set of tons is the one that's under my rig now.
That's
and
awesome.
They've been beaten across at least the eastern side of this country.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I didn't build your rig for you, but same kind of thing. You just like meet a couple people here and there, and all of a sudden you know it. Like, I mean, obviously Kevin and Litch were essentially the same kind of person, right? They'd help everyone out, and that's essentially how I got into club wheeling and stuff like that. I hung out with Kevin a lot and started hanging out with bunch of other people, and then you're like, oh, I got this transfer case for you, I got these axles you should buy, I got this you should buy, I got that you should buy, and all of a sudden you got $8-9 wrapped up in parts.
Yeah.
And get it.
I don't know how I met Kevin. Like, it just escapes me at this point in time. But he invited me to come down, and I think I was buying something off of him or whatnot, and like we started talking, and suddenly it was, hey man, come back and I'll hook you up with a set of shock hoops.
Yeah.
Just throw me a couple of bucks for the tube. And
that was on your blue one, right?
Yeah, it's on my blue one. Those ones are still sitting in there, and they're holding my coilovers up now, and they're like fully tied into my cage. They're supporting the fucking ass end of that shit box because the uniframe's gone.
He sent me pictures of that thing when you just dropped it off, right? Because he did some work on like the rear cage of it too, right?
No, that was Graham that did work on the rear cage.
Oh, so all he did was shock hoops?
All we did was I brought the Jeep down there, and we measured it, and we bent up shock hoops.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, I remember seeing pictures of it in his parking lot. He's like, this kid says he knows you. And I said, yeah, he's from Torrington. Watch out for him.
That's a good fucking... At that time, it was Harwinton. But yeah.
Oh, yeah, Harwinton's all right.
I downgraded to Torrington afterwards because I moved out of my mom's house and I needed a cheap rental.
That's a perfect place to go to Torrington then.
Yep.
Not anymore.
Well, that's why I moved out of the state.
And that's why I moved out of the state.
But yeah, so I mean, just to kind of go back over it, I just started wheeling a lot in my truck, and I bought some, TJs and YJs here and there, and would wheel them for a little bit, more of like a, street driver. And then I got into Eastern four-wheelers, and I hit it off pretty good with like everyone in there. With Jeff, especially, Kevin was pretty involved. Steve was pretty involved. And we just kind of all started having a good time wheeling a whole bunch together. I think it was like only a year after I joined, I ended up being the president of it. Jeff was trying to have a kid. Kevin was in every other fucking club in New England already anyways.
Yeah, and I remember I was trying to join that, and I forget what happened. I think I took time off from the yellow rig to build the blue rig, and then just...
That sounds right.
Everything fell apart around me.
That also sounds right.
Not saying that Eastern's falling apart, because I know they're still going, I believe. But like, I ended up going and just sticking with Backyard Built, because at that point in time, we started really picking up with the wheeling.
So I think I'm getting Backyard Built. Is there a Barnyard Built too?
I've got no clue, dude.
I don't know if I've ever heard of it, if there is one.
Did Jess help you guys start?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So it's the same one. So that's like another person who actually like randomly found the wheeling was Jess. We did
a saint.
So she's literally the best. I met her, Todd Mester. He was in Eastern, and I started wheeling with him all the time because that fucker would literally wheel every weekend, and I would wheel every single weekend. And we ended up doing like this huge run up in Maine. We did like a 900-mile trip. We lived it out of the Jeeps and everything. I think there was like 5 or 6 of us that did it. And I met Jess there, and we just had like a great time. And we started hanging out a whole bunch like that and wheeling. We actually put our own. It was the year after that, we put our own trip on up in Maine. We think we did like 400 miles or so, and camped out and tented out and all that kind of stuff every night. But it's crazy like how many people you meet that you didn't even realize it. Yeah. Every time you go out, you're always meeting someone new, and in 2 months are like literally your best friend, and it's just wild how many good people you meet out in the woods.
It's truly wild. Like I met you, Lich, Woody, and started down the path that I ended up on in the RBC parking lot.
Yeah, it's like the weirdest shit ever.
Yeah.
And you'd like, you meet 1 or 2 people like Kevin and Lich that they know 4,000 people. You go to one event with them, and then like everyone's your best friend. And like I said, kind of the parts thing, people are, always looking out for you if you need tires or a new engine or trans or a chassis or whatever. I mean, you go home and that night there's 5 people sending you every freaking Facebook Marketplace listing that's ever been made before to buy shit.
Yeah, you're better off just asking people, hey, if you see something sort of like, I'm looking for tires or something, you can...
Yeah.
I all the stuff I end up buying is always stuff that other people send me, right? It's just, I don't know, if I looked for it myself, I'd never find it. And it's not that I'm bad at searching on the Marketplace, it's just other people just always seem to find those.
I swear everyone gets different results. Like, you can punch in, like, Dodge Ram rock crawler into Facebook, and all of us will have different results, even though we're all looking in the same area.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. That's why I always have Luke look up all my shit for me.
I don't know how I do it either, because I find the stupidest fucking deals.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would literally use, like, I remember I used to use my phone for Craigslist when they used to have, like, the good Craigslist app, and then go on my computer, and it would be totally different ads. Like, none of them would even correlate, and you'd search the same thing in the same area.
And it wouldn't. It just...
But yeah, so I got big into the club, like I said, became the president, and I mean, I was wheeling like probably pretty close to every single week. And I was going to Vermont a lot. We had a club property up there, Crazy Eights.
Okay. I don't think I've been there, but I've heard of that one.
Yeah, it's a blast. I mean, I probably went up there like 10 times a year. Or for 10 weekends, and we would just camp out and wheel, and you could wheel for 2 minutes or you could wheel for 10 minutes, or all day, or do whatever, because you're staying there, no one bothered you or whatever. I had another phone call. I got sidetracked. And so we spent a ton of time up there, and then we put it together like the Florida Vacation event. Have you guys heard of that?
I've heard about you guys doing that.
Yeah, I haven't heard of that one.
Yes, we put that was up in Massachusetts, and it was kind of like a super tiny fall crawl. You'd go there. Everyone would stay in a campground. There's usually about 75 rigs, and you'd kind of just choose what trail you'd want to go do the next day. Mm-hmm. We'd have like a big cookout, big fire. Everyone would hang out, have a good time. We did raffles and all that kind of stuff. I think I was a part of that for either 2 or I think maybe it was 3 years we did that. But we would do Old Florida Road was one of the trails you could do. Our private property Deadfall, our private property Crazy Eights, and then the last couple of years I think we did Badlands as one of the properties, and we may have had 1 or 2 other ones. I think it was just like some Class 8 roads or something people could choose from. But we did that, and I just was having a great time. Like I said, I was wheeling every single weekend, and I had some different Wranglers. I built like a stretch TJ. I think it was like a 108-inch wheelbase, something like that I would drive on the street, and I loved that thing. It was all my TJs I ever had were 2.5s.
Yep.
and they were all 2.55 speeds, and I just love those things for some reason because you could get them for a third of the cost of a 4.0 Wrangler. And honestly, I like the 4.0s are obviously better, but the 2.5s aren't that much worse
No,
than
they're not. They're not
like,
that
yeah, for the price difference, it was so worth just buying a 2.5. So I probably had 6 or 7 of those things over the couple of years of me wheeling. I'd buy them and either sell them to friends or part them out or do whatever. And in the meantime, every year I would kind of cut up that Dodge Ram I had. I ended up 4-linking the rear. I cut most of the tube work off, redid the rear of it, redid the front of it, redid the cab of it, and just kept putting miles on that thing. I probably had 15,000 miles on that thing in the couple of years of wheeling because, like I said, we just go out every weekend and end up being on reds. I put a MP 435 in it with a crawl box and 205. Built everything myself just from kind of watching YouTube and having, random people in the community help me and stuff like that. And yeah, I just was getting kind of bored of living in Connecticut and got a new girlfriend. She wanted to move out. I was looking at buying a house, and I was in Illinois for training for work. I worked for Caterpillar and met a guy who lived out here in Arizona, and he's like, dude, they would hire you in 2 seconds if you applied out here. Not really. I'm like, yeah, whatever. Everyone says that shit. Mm-hmm. Got back to the hotel, was talking to the girlfriend on the phone. She's like, then apply if they're going to hire you. Like, we'll move to Arizona. And it, like, ironically, like 2 months before this, we came out to Arizona, which neither of us had ever been, to visit my aunt and uncle in the wintertime. And we did like the Grand Canyon and like all the touristy stuff here. And we're like, this place is freaking badass. I mean, there's rock crawlers like literally going down the highway, like full tube chassis buggies ripping down the highway, and
yeah, that's awesome.
Side by sides everywhere. Like,
isn't it so weird when you get out of Connecticut? Like, it's just mind blowing because I live at Rock Bouncer Central, so I've said it on the podcast before. But like, I've gone to work in the summertime, and there will be a dude just sitting there in like a powder-coated purple rock buggy at the gas station, and you're like, I am not in fucking Connecticut anymore.
Yeah. So the first time we went to Tennessee, like I was saying, we stayed in the cabins, and I don't know if any of you guys have been there before at Windrock, but you got to drive on the street for like a mile and a half or so. I don't even really remember. But we were going down the street, and we all got to the general store to like get our day passes or whatever. And we were all just mind blown. Like, that was the craziest thing we've ever done. And like later that day, we end up being way out on trail. I think this was the second year because we had like Eric Swenson and Mark Brancieri and all them were there with us.
Well, you know Mark too?
I know Mark pretty well, yeah.
He's awesome. We've been trying to get in contact with him, but down the road.
Yeah. He's like too smart, though. He makes you feel really dumb. But so yeah, we end up just driving on the street like 10 miles back, and we were all just mind blown because it was like the craziest thing we've ever done. Like, Eric was on Portals and Unimogs and 42s, and we're just like ripping a 55-mile-an-hour road back to Windrock. And I come out here, and people are like, that's just the norm, and it was just mind blowing to me.
Yeah,
but
it's fucking mind blowing to drive what I have now and have that be like normal. Like,
yeah, people are like, oh wow, you're not in 42s. That's kind of weird.
Yeah,
like,
pull into the gas station and people are like, yo, that's a sick XJ. Like, I love what you did with it, but why didn't you just cut it up more? You could still drive it. And I'm like,
yeah. People are like calling you out at the gas station.
Like, come on, cut the front off.
Yeah, I'm like, it's stretched 10 fucking inches. Leave me alone. It's on coilovers. Fuck off.
Yeah. But long story short, I ended up taking a job out here, and I bought a new truck slightly before that, and it was a 32-foot gooseneck, and we threw the Wrangler I had at the time on the trailer. My girlfriend had a Wrangler. Pretty much everything else we owned was in totes and my toolbox and stuff, and drove out here. like the timing all worked out perfectly. We just essentially rented a house from my aunt and uncle for a couple months while they were back in Connecticut. And we ended up buying a house out here. Go ahead.
How did it feel when you saw that state line and you realized it was the last time that you were going to see it with the Connecticut driver's license?
So honestly, it still doesn't I've been out here for almost 3 years. Almost 3 years. And it still doesn't even feel real. Like I actually moved out. Like my girlfriend says the same thing. Like it just feels like we're going to have to go back to fucking Connecticut at some point. Like you're on a super long vacation. But at first, it's so weird because everything's so new, right? Like I remember when we came out here for my interview, I'm like, I don't even know like what fucking highway goes where or like where north is or any direction or anything. And it was so weird going to such a foreign place. Luckily for work, I travel a ton. So once I started working, I picked up on, general direction and highways and stuff like that pretty quickly. But it was really weird moving to a completely new place and not really knowing anyone or knowing anything to do or anything like that. Obviously we moved out here. I started like going on Google and stuff and, kind of back up a little bit. We actually hosted Ultimate Adventure at Crazy Eights before.
I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, I totally forgot about that. We hosted Ultimate Adventure. And Johnny Wood actually had a second gen. He's from California. And he knew, again, just like 1,000 names, but he knew Shane from Full Size Invasion out in Moab that they do. Shane Duente, he's got the blue third gen Cummins.
Yep.
And I knew Shane, obviously, because he was in Eastern, and we were both like full size truck guys. So got talking to Johnny, and when I moved out here, I was like, oh, he's like literally the only person I know out here. So I messaged him, and he's like, oh, I would go to this place, Table Mesa. Like that's when we go to Arizona, that's where we go. So I Googled it, went out there, and it was literally just my girlfriend and I in my Jeep. And at the time it was a 2.5 5-speed TJ, and it was linked, I think, on 37s. But it was literally just us, and it ended up being like 117 degrees that day. And we were on this trail that I ended up going down it backwards, and I didn't even see like the entrance to it, and it ended up being called Collateral Damage. And like 5 foot in, my Jeep flopped on its side, and it was like literally just her and I in the middle of the fucking desert in the middle of the summer, had no idea like what I was doing. So I had her like pulling with a tow strap as I was just dumping the clutch in reverse, trying to get the flop back over. Got it back over, and she's like all pissed off, and I'm pissed off, and like we're just fucking going home. This is bullshit. Go home and just kind of like reevaluated it and started trying to like join clubs and stuff out here because that's just kind of what I knew from being in New England.
Yep.
And there's really no club. Like there are clubs out here. I went to like one of those cars and coffee things against my better judgment to like just try to meet even one fucking person that I could go wheeling with.
Yep.
And just typical like wheeling community. There was this guy with an LJ there, right? And I'm like, dude, this thing, it was on a Dana 30 on like 42s, just beat to like, it looked like Luke's Jeep, like just beat to shit. And
I'm not taking that as a
and I mean, it was just raisin, and I was like, dude, that thing's cool. He's like, yeah, blah, blah, talking to him and everything like that. Well, come to find out, dude, like 6 months ago, I'm talking to this guy, we'll get into this, but racing razors, I'm talking to this guy racing a Can-Am, and it was the same fucking guy who owns that Jeep. He's like, yeah, I'm going out Jeeping, and I'm like, no fucking way. He showed me a picture. I said, dude, like, were you at this Cars and Coffee event like 2 years ago? And he's like, yeah. I said, look at this. This is literally a picture of your fucking Jeep. This was like the first time I moved here. I came to this first thing, and you were literally the first person I talked to, and now I'm racing against you. And he's like, holy shit. And I'm like, that's literally just wheeling for you. Like, you meet so many people and come across them again in your life. It's wild.
That's awesome.
I don't know if you listen, but Trail Trash on Instagram, I don't know if you followed them or you've seen their stuff, but
yeah,
they've had a bunch of shit going around. We've had them on a couple of times, and those are fucking awesome dudes. But we talked to them on the podcast shortly after I got down here, and they're now borrowing my bender and my chop saw to do work on stuff for their
Oh
Jeep.
my gosh.
And I'm going wheeling with them in March.
You're going to be
So,
ready in
like-
March?
Huh?
Is your thing going to be ready by March?
I was going to be wheeling it in January, but I've got a sensor problem. Once I get that sensor problem, it's ready to wheel.
Gotcha.
It's just bogging out, and like I had a bad crank position sensor, but now it's doing this thing where it like kind of misses really shitty at low RPMs. So I'm trying to figure that shit out because, you know, Cherokee that sat for a year and a half.
What do you have for a fuel system?
Moto built fuel cell with a factory pump.
I was going to say, it sounds like it's probably a fuel pressure issue, honestly, with those things. Being a returnless system.
I would think if it was a fuel pressure issue, it would have issues through the entire RPM band, not once you got past 2,000.
My rock, like my tube buggy I had was the 5.2, and I just had like a inline Walbro pump or whatever brand it was with the pressure regulator on it, and that thing like just always ran like garbage until I literally had to clean it out like an old carburetor, like just sit there and like flog the throttle and then hold it forward, and then it would run good. But other than that, it would just stumble and fart and pop like the whole day on the trail.
I think what my issue is my distributor, because I submerged it at Roush well above the distributor, and I never bothered to open it back up. Like, we're talking, I've got buckets in there, and we're talking the water was up to like almost my nipples.
Ooh.
So it was like kissing the bottom of the dash well above the vents. And I never bothered to clean it out or figure out any of the stuff after that. I just went to wheel it.
Gotcha.
That was the last day it wheeled before. Holy shit! Wow.
Yeah, dude.
It honestly sounds like
thing.
it honestly sounds easier just to buy a new one and start over.
It's really not. It would be easier to LS in it and just keep going.
Yeah.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. It's my favorite vehicle I've ever owned.
Yeah.
You made the comment about how with your truck you put like 15,000 miles on it. I bought this Jeep with 290 something thousand miles on it, and I broke 325 the other week.
I remember you were dailying that thing after you put the axles and stuff in it, right?
I was dailying it quite a bit. Like, I would just park my tow rig and just drive it. Like,
Yeah, you had a Chevy, you had to park it.
yeah, well, I bought a Ford too, and then I had to park that for a month while I was at the dealership, and the Chevy
Oh my
dealership
God.
crashed it that I had bought that truck from.
What a mess.
It had death wobble, and they're like, "Oh, it doesn't have death wobble. You don't know what you're talking about." And then I get a phone call. Hey, we put your truck into a guardrail. It's really light, but we're gonna replace your front bumper and the headlight.
Oh my God.
And then they shipped it off to the Ford dealership, and I got it back 2 weeks later, and it was perfect. And I haven't worked on it since, other than
good.
like a wheel bearing and just normal wear and tear.
Right.
And those wheel bearings are par for the course. That's easy shit.
Yeah, that's easy shit.
It's like-
I still paid someone to do it because it was right before Harlan, and I couldn't be.
Come on. I mean, I guess it depending on your warranty and shit. That
Is it a newer Super Duty?
It's a 2012 6.2.
Oh, nice. Those are good.
6R 140 with 430s. That truck tows my Jeep like it's not even there.
Yeah. Yeah, those are good trucks.
And you'll appreciate this. I'm doing a resto mod on my dad's Cummins.
I listened to that part, the one that's all rotted out.
Yep.
Right
That's
on.
going to be a fun one. I didn't know you listened.
I just started like a little bit ago. I listened to Timmy's because he's a jackass. And
was
a
a surprising one. He was pretty quiet to start off.
Yeah,
Took a little bit of poking and prodding to get him going.
That's because he wasn't hammered and didn't have a goldfish in front of him.
that sounds about right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good fucking dude, too.
Yeah, Timmy's freaking hilarious. I know you started telling the story about in Tennessee, but I gotta tell you from our perspective, like when they got there, right? So we were out wheeling all day, him and his dad pulling after driving all night, and Tim's like just super pissed off and irritable. And we were all super tired from like, we literally would wheel all day long there. So we came back, and then I think they went into town or something, like he was saying, came back, and he like rallied. We were like literally all ready for bed, and he's like, fucking night run, night run, night run. So we all end up like, all right, fuck it, whatever. Like, you guys just drove all day. We'll go for a night run. We all fueled up and headed out, and we were like, let's do this trail we've never done before. So we start heading out to the trail, and it starts snowing like a motherfucker in Tennessee. Like a
doesn't
fucking
snow
blizzard.
in Tennessee.
Dude, I could barely see the front of my buggy in front of me, right? And Timmy, within 5 minutes, like everyone has to stop and pee every freaking 5 minutes. So everyone's out peeing, and we're like, where the hell's Timmy? Timmy walks into the woods, falls over. His dad has to pick him up, put him in the buggy, and his dad goes, Tim, whatever you do, don't break the plexiglass, because they just put like plexiglass all around the footwells of his buggy so that like rocks and mud and all that shit didn't come in. And he goes, what? And as soon as he says that, he like goes to like stretch his legs and blows both of his feet through the fucking plexiglass. And his dad's like, Timmy, I told you that's the one thing I don't want you to fucking do. And he goes, don't throw up in here. So we're wheeling and wheeling and wheeling, and we stop, and his rig keeps overheating, like Tim was saying, and Tim is just passed out cold in the passenger seat, just drooling all over himself, everything. And we're all like pissed off because we're like, this fucking dude is the one who rallied all of us to go wheeling. It's like 17 degrees out. Some of us are wearing sweatshirts. Most of us are wearing like shorts and long sleeves. We're ready to go to bed. Freezing our ass off. Tim's sleeping. Tim wakes up and just like yells, what the fuck? Leans over on his dad's seat and throws up all in his dad's racing suit. I literally have pictures of it on my Facebook still. And his dad is like, Tim, what the fuck are you doing? So we end up on this trail, dude. Like, it's like 2:30 in the morning after fixing all this shit on this trail, and it's like a 60-degree climb, and it's just switchbacks in the snow, and we're all on like bald red labels. And it was like the best and worst wheeling trip we freaking had out there, because it was so much fun, but it was so miserable at the same time. Do you know who Drew is? He had that fucking wild LJ. It was on like ORIs on 42s. He was in the Trail Slayers for a while.
Yes
and no. So he was there, and he was like, I am literally 2 seconds from fucking strangling Tim and leaving him out here, because he was so, like, his shit is so nice. Like, his rig doesn't even have a scratch on it. Like, he was so perfect with the way he drove that thing and kept it, like, he would armor all it after every trail ride we do out there.
Wow.
And it was a freaking funny ass night. But yeah, so that's the part of it that Tim didn't tell you, or didn't remember, I should say.
Oh, I like that. That's
Well, of course he didn't remember. It sounded like he was sleeping.
Yeah, he was. He was KO'd. I'll have to see if I can find that picture, and I'll send it to one of you guys. It's freaking hilarious.
That's beautiful.
So yeah, we had some great. Do you guys know Eric Swenson?
Yep.
Yeah. So our introduction to Eric was that Subaru buggy with the engine mounted to the control arms.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the buggy day that you guys had over here in Arlington.
Where I blew my shit up. The last run of Ducky.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah, and I ran out of gas because I had thrown like 10 gallons in it and thought I was good, and I wasn't. Yeah,
I wish there's like only a couple times a year I wish I lived back in Connecticut, and I just wish I stayed there a little bit longer, because I feel like that property had pretty good potential, and we just started cutting it. And that one trail was pretty freaking badass, that buggy line we cut.
You'll appreciate this. It's kind of a little bullshit story, but my neighbor wanted to get into wheeling when I moved to Torrington, and I was like, yeah, we're going to a spot in Harwinton. We'll just drive my Jeep over there, because I had Barry on 40s at that time. it turned out to be a fucking work day with no fucking wheeling. So this poor kid got fucking roped into splitting wood. And like to make it up for him or to him, I brought him wheeling twice to Ma Bell, and he was with me the first time I one-shotted Gatekeeper. I had that fucking driver tire hanging about 3 feet in the air, standing on it, and it finally went. And that was this poor kid's introduction to wheeling.
Did he sell his Jeep?
Didn't even have a Jeep. Had a 1500 Dodge that he used for plowing, but he had never even like seen this shit before. So his fucking introduction was that.
Oh my! I've only ever been to Mabel once, and it was with. Like when I first got into wheeling, remember when John still had his truggy?
Yeah, dude, that
was the only time I've ever been there. It was I can't remember who the hell showed up, but it was just a couple of us. And
wait, was that the day that John had the truggy? Harry was out there. Dan McPherson was spotting. Harry,
yeah,
Hendrick,
yeah.
No, so you were there for that.
I'm pretty sure. Because, what the hell's like Josh? What the fuck's his name? Josh Suet or something? No, I don't think Josh Greenleaf was there.
Okay, but if it's the day I'm thinking of, Harry blew up the front axle and launched a rear drive shaft in the same day. I drove.
Oh no, it was Mo that was there with us. It was Mo and Steve.
All right, so different day.
Yeah, it must have been a different day.
Because that day I drove home and I melted the torque converter in my AW4. That was my first time ever wheeling Ma Bell.
Oh my gosh. You were like a regular thereafter, huh?
Yeah, I put another transmission and a Dana 44 in and thought I was hot shit on brand new 35 General Grabbers with frame stiffeners because I wheel my XJ fucking hard. Shit, you remember Zuki Hill? Did you ever get back there?
Was that the one way in the back that like was technically trespassing or some shit?
Yeah. So it depended on what group you went with, because if you went out there with a group that knew the landowner, no problems. If you didn't know the landowner, it was trespassing.
Yeah.
So
like I said, I only ever went out there that once, and honestly, I don't even remember if I brought my own rig or what the deal was. Oh no, I did. It was like my first TJ I had. It was the TurtleCon. And yeah, I wasn't even like, I think I was on 33s with like just a Detroit in the front or some shit like that.
So do you know Andy Heller by any chance?
Andy Heller.
He's got a, what is it? That amber, or not the amber, the orange YJ with a OM 617 in it now.
Doesn't sound familiar.
Well, we were with a group that knew the landowner, so we went out to Zuki Hill, and I put my XJ, my old XJ, almost on its side. I crushed the door panel in, did a bunch of damage to the B pillar, trying to get up Zuki Hill on 35s with the Dana 44 in it, and after that happened, we had a dude blow a clutch line coming out of there, so his Jeep was fucking dead in the water, and I dragged him in neutral up from the back. And then after we got him up to the top, we went to that rock garden up there, and I put a rock through the door and almost fucking took Kish's leg out.
Luke, you're forgetting something very important. Me and you, after we got to the top, had to hike halfway back to Zuki Hill to grab your fucking hood because no one fucking thought of grabbing it.
We had to take my hood off because it was overheating, tugging this YJ out.
Oh my gosh.
Fun memories from 2015.
Yeah.
Like, 11 people drove by the fucking hood, propped up on a tree, and no one thought of grabbing it.
They probably just thought it was scrap metal, honestly.
They all just take it off.
It is a Cherokee.
Yeah. I still got Cherokee parts at my parents' house, I bet.
I'm sure you do.
Hey, did you ever get rid of that Dana 50?
I honestly, dude, I don't know. There's been so many people I've just told to go to my house and take anything that's useful to them.
Yeah, she should probably hook up with Tyler afterwards and see if he's still got that Dana 50 so you can get some spares.
I'll be home in like the middle of January, and I got to go through. Hopefully, there's not a bunch of snow, but see what else is left there.
No shit.
Dude, I can't wait for this winter because no snow. It's gonna be so.
It's so nice, but it's so weird. Like it's literally almost Christmas, and it's like 75 degrees out here every day.
Dude, I was driving with my buddy from down here, and he's got a 4th gen Cummins that's tuned and deleted and all that shit. And we were bombing down the highway at lunchtime to go get Chick-fil-A, and I'm like, dude, I can't believe we're like 4 days away from Christmas, and I've got the
windows down. Yeah,
5 degrees, and he's like, it's fucking cold, dude. Roll the window up. I'm like, dude, what are you talking about?
Not.
Spring weather.
Yeah, I'll literally come home from work and my girlfriend will be shivering, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" She's like, "I'm cold." Like it's 81 degrees out. How are you fucking cold?
That's just because she's a female.
That is true. But we moved out here, just kind of get back on track. We moved out here, had the Jeeps and stuff, did a bunch of rock crawling out here, met up with a few people, would go out, once in a while, nothing too crazy. I can't remember. There was a reason I ended up going to Mexico with my cousin, asked me to go down there for the Baja 1000 race. Mm-hmm. And not really knowing, I did that one race at Mountain Mud Run up there, was at New Hampshire, I think it is. Yep. In my truck, and I was like, oh, this is pretty freaking cool. I mean, my adrenaline was like through the freaking roof. I was shaking and stuff the whole time. So we ended up going down to the Baja 1000, and that year they ended up getting a ton of rain, and actually the whole race got delayed. And it was like literally the craziest thing I've ever done. Like even just going down there and seeing like the tech line and contingency and the trophy trucks that are literally like $1 million for one vehicle. I mean, the coilovers on them are, 6-inch coils on coilovers and crazy shit like that. And it was just crazy to me. We ended up chasing for a UTV team, like a factory players team. And it was pretty neat. Came back and didn't really, wasn't really going to pursue it because I was kind of into rock crawling still. And around that same time, Kevin actually, what the hell did he do? I think he flew. Yeah, so he flew out here and hung out for like 4 weeks out here with us. And while my girlfriend and I were at work, he'd take one of our Jeeps or my truck or whatever, and he'd literally go exploring like every day and come back and show us all the pictures and shit of places he went. And he ended up driving. I bought a trailer out here, so he drove my personal Dodge and my trailer and my aunt's car. He towed it back to Connecticut for me, and he stayed in Connecticut for a couple months, and then he loaded up my buggy and brought that out here for me, and hung out for a couple more weeks and then flew home. So we went out like twice, I think, out here in my 2 buggy, my Dodge, and it just wasn't nearly as fun out here as it was back home because it's fucking hot out here. Like we had no AC, obviously, like it's just a full 2 buggy. Their exhaust is like right by your feet. Everything's dusty and loud.
Yeah, and you have to like build a rig to the climate almost. Like around here.
Yes, seriously.
Yeah, like I noticed that my exhaust is not bad out here, but if you were talking about out there, I imagine I'd end up with more fucking dust in the cabin than I care to deal with just from the exhaust alone.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm like, it was so loud, and out here, like, it's cool, right? So I can drive it from my house and go wheeling like wherever I want to, as long as it's not like super sketchy to drive on the road, which mine was. So I would trailer it to the trailhead, but like even the trails are a couple of miles from the trailhead, unlike back home where you'd go to like, anywhere you unload in 15 feet, you're in for low already. And out here, it's like a couple of miles, so you're cruising like the frickin' thing's overheating, and there's sand and dust in your eyes, and it was just shitty. So we didn't go out in it that much, and it was just sitting. Kind of around the same time, I ended up going to another desert race that was in Parker, Arizona, which is like near the California border. And I met some like, dude, honestly, I fucking love California for one reason, and it's for the Glamis sand dunes. Because once you go there, you will fucking never want to do anything else in your life. So I ended up meeting some guy, some like off-road legend, Kurt Leduc, who I didn't even know who the hell he was at the time. And we were just like sitting around the campfire with him, and I was talking about like, yo, it's pretty cool racing. And he actually came from rock crawling too. And he knew, like, I knew the owner of Skyjacker and stuff like that. I met a bunch of those guys from Ultimate Adventure. And he knew like a bunch of people I knew. It was kind of funny. And he's like, dude, you're young. Like, if you want to get into racing, do it now. Like, don't wait. So I literally came home that weekend and I bought a Razor like a couple days after. It was just a bare chassis. Bought it from a kid who, you know, kind of the same age. He used to race it and stuff like that. It's just like the most affordable way to get into racing out here. I mean, you can buy it for, you know, you can spend 10 grand, you could spend 60 grand on a Razor.
Yeah.
Just pretty much like rock crawling, you know. So I bought it and literally knew not a fucking thing about it. It's pretty much, you know, they're like 1,000 cc's. The NA motors are about 100 horsepower. The turboed ones are about 160. They use a belt.
Take a second and talk about how fucking insane that is, because, you know, like, we're used to yeeting Jeeps with 160 horsepower that weigh 6,000 fucking pounds. That thing's got to weigh what? 12 or 2,000 maybe?
So my like bigger 2-seat car I had a 20-gallon fuel cell in it. And that one was about 1,700. The new one I'm building is going to be about 1,400. And the new one I'm in the middle of building is only a single seater also. So it's super narrow. And yeah, so I had that. The first one I bought was just a chassis. I ended up putting like long travel suspension on it. So from the factory, most of the side-by-sides come at 64 inches wide. Obviously, like, you know, the wider the better, right? Especially for desert racing, it's all whoops and just gnarly terrain. So I had long travel on it. It had a fuel cell in the chassis already. But the price, dude, like, I thought rock crawler stuff was expensive. The UTV stuff is just absolutely insane. That fuel cell was $5,300 new. Like,
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, for a fuel tank. My coilovers were almost $6,000. Like, it's
So,
it's another freaking
What the fuck?
yeah.
Now, is there a reason? Does it have to be specific for a Razor, the coilovers and stuff?
Yeah, so yeah, they're so like the ones I have, you can buy just a normal shock, like essentially like a big shock, you know, right, that comes on a car.
Yep.
They're made by Walker Evans, and you can buy those on like Facebook for a couple $100 per shock. Like, you just have a stock car and you blow it. But the ones I run on the race car are internal bypass, so they have all sorts of valving and different chambers and everything inside of them. And they're a 3.5-inch shock compared to a 2.5-inch shock that'd come on a stock one. It's just everything is bigger on them.
It's like a racing quality shock. So
yeah, exactly.
You
Yeah,
what you pay for.
yeah.
So, this is going to sound like a stupid question, but it was one of those ideas that I was pondering with K-pop
Running
a while ago.
UTV coilovers on your Jeep.
Yeah, running the 12-inch travel ones off of the rear of, I think it was a Polaris, and he was like, no, dude, they're the exact same. They've got a 3/4 diameter shaft body, and they're 12 inches long. I could get you a set for $500, and I'm like, that doesn't sound right.
I mean, I guess they are. I've never really had one side by side, but like when I still had my rock crawler, my Razor shocks made those things look like a fucking Tinker toy. Like, because a normal coil, like a coil spring on the, like those big shocks I had, I think they were only 2.5-inch coils because it was like a 2-inch shock and a 2.5-inch coil. And now I have a 3.5-inch shock, and I think it's a 4-inch coil. So they're just huge because, like on a Jeep, right? You're gonna have your shock location is going to be so far out on the axle, and essentially it's going to be straight up and down. We're on UTVs. they're on the chassis side. They're super far in. There's only like probably 12 inches of separation on the chassis side. And there's going to be like 60 inches of separation on the axle side, which is going to cause a tremendous amount of pressure on the shock. So you need a way bigger shock with heavier springs and everything like that to support all the travel.
Yep.
Because they're IFS and IRS.
This is super cool to hear about, especially because eventually down the road we're going to have my buddy from down here, Tucker, on, who does rock bouncing with those.
Okay.
So I'm going to have to ask him about this shit and see how it compares to desert racing.
It's close to the same. Those guys, they build their cars a little differently. A lot of them still run long travel and stuff like that. They'll run the same amount of parts. They have more, so they need more like stronger parts for impact loads and stuff like that. So they'll have like aluminum diffs, a lot of cryoed parts and stuff like that, where we don't need to worry about that as much, but we need like longevity stuff. So like on my car, everything, a lot of the suspension mounts were 10 millimeter. So that hold all your A-arms on, your trailing arms and all that stuff, which is a pretty tiny bolt.
Yeah.
When you think you're going through like 3-foot whoops at 70.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd trust a 10 millimeter.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like all that,
see why not.
so all that stuff, like I upgraded a lot of it to either 12 millimeter or half inch. So there's just, I mean, it's pretty similar, right? Like you upgrade one thing, you got to do a bunch of corresponding upgrades to go along with it.
Yep.
But it seems like unfortunately, they're more freaking money, but goddamn, dude, it's so much more fun. And out here, they're street legal, right? So that makes it way cooler too. So I ended up buying a new one about 8 months ago. We bought a turboed model, Polaris Pro XP 2-seater, and we put I got almost 2,000 miles on it already, and we can literally leave from my garage, like open my door and go do 115 miles through the desert and come back. Go grocery shopping in it or go do whatever we need to in it. It's pretty freaking wild.
That is absolutely amazing.
Yeah. So in that one, we when you get them, right, like I said, they're all have small bolts and stuff like that. The newer ones are getting pretty good. Like the newest model that Polaris just released a couple weeks ago actually has an inline 4-cylinder in it, naturally aspirated. I think it's 220 horsepower.
Damn.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. And it'll do so. Like the Matlocks, they're a pretty big name out here that race. They just raced the Baja 1000 with it, which was actually like 1,400 miles roughly. And like obviously it sounds like a lot, but that's literally 1,400 miles like nonstop, right? So you get in your car and you're driving 1,400 miles at race pace. And I think it was around 109 was the top speed of their car, and theirs was almost bone stock. And I mean, these things have, huge shocks on them. They have almost 30 inches of suspension travel. They're just freaking crazy.
From the factory. They just come ready.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. Yeah. The new ones are 74 inches wide. Yeah. 74 inches wide. My older race car I have is 72. My new one's going to be about 77 that I'm building. But so I end up racing. So I built that whole car, went out in it. Like the first night, I've never even drove a freaking RZR or anything. My girlfriend and I hopped in it and went out into the desert, just like flying, having a freaking blast with like just the normal headlights and shit. And we came over this crest and just dumped it into a puddle like at 40, literally just landed smack dab in the center. And it was just getting dark, and it was so fucking cold. Like it just made it so shitty. So we just ended up cruising the road all the way home and kind of went through the whole thing. And I ended up joining up with a racing team out here. They kind of like taught me, the do's and don'ts of everything. Like what you got to do before each race and during the race, and how to drive the cars and stuff like that. They helped me out a lot. And I ended up racing this whole past year in my own car. It's a 2-seater, but I only race by myself, and I actually ended up winning my whole class this year. I just had my awards banquet on Sunday.
By the way, major congratulations on that. That's pretty fucking awesome for a rookie.
Yeah, so I was super like it's not a crazy competitive series I was in, but it was still just kind of cool. Like I essentially just wanted to prove to myself that I could like win the year. I knew I could.
So, what series is it?
So it's called AZOP. There's not really anything that compares to it back on the East Coast, but I think we had like 9 or 10 races this year. So the races will go from like literally there was a few races. It's like a motocross track that you're racing on. So I'm like jumping the shit out of it. And then the last race I did was 147 miles. So, I mean, you're at race pace, just like mobbing whoops and, huge sandy berms and everything, for, almost 150 miles nonstop, which doesn't sound that much until you're in the car for like 20 minutes and you're already freaking winded from driving as fast. Like, just imagine trying to drive your Jeep as fast as you possibly can. Like, you literally get tired in 10 minutes.
Yeah. So when I did the 4-link riding with Graham, fucking weirdest driving experience I've ever had because it was almost effortless, but at the same time you're freaking out because you don't want to end up going off the side of Harlan.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
so
gotta
like
imagine it's the same.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's crazy. Like, the big issue out here is accidents, right? Because they're just so fucking capable, like right from the factory. You can go buy like a bone stock base model RZR from the dealership, and the thing will do 80 through like a sand wash, right? With you and your wife and your 2 kids or your dogs in the back seat or whatever. And I mean, you can hit literally 2 or 3 foot like whoop sections and be drinking a coffee at the same time.
Yeah. I was just happy to manage a foot whoop sections at 40.
Yeah. And I'd like, there's literally nothing like it. Like, it's just such a crazy experience. So, like, I try to get everyone that comes out here and visits, I try to get like in the car just so they can know. I didn't even know what a fucking RZR was when I lived back in Connecticut, right? No one has them.
Yeah,
Everyone
nobody's got them.
Stuff.
It's not a thing.
Right. So I'm like, I got Kevin hooked on it. That motherfucker went out and bought one, and he actually was racing it for a while too with Jordan. And they were doing pretty good too in it.
Dude, I almost don't want to talk about it, but that motherfucker, almost mad at him. He agreed to come on the podcast, and we were supposed to have him on before his accident. Like, the Tuesday after was his day.
Oh, fuck.
So we were going to talk, like, racing RZRs and fucking doing stupid shit in the woods and fucking gone too fucking soon. But he took me out in that fucking RZR one time, and that thing was stupid. Not like racing or anything, but we were at that property in Harwinton, and we whipped right up to the top of the fucking rock section like we were not even, going anywhere.
That thing was 2-wheel drive then too, because he broke it and was fucking too lazy to ever fix it the right way.
That sounds perfectly correct.
But yeah, that thing only had 2-wheel drive for so long.
That dude was such a fucking legend, though.
He was.
He bought that samurai buggy, and he's showing it to me, and he's like showing me pictures. Yeah, I pulled a dump truck out, and I blew a rear Toyota Burfield, or not Burfield, shaft up. And so it's 3-wheel drive, but I'm planning on taking it to F&F, and I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, I think I'll throw another shaft in it, but we'll figure that out
literally
later.
No cares. Wild. I ran Humble Pie with him, I think for 3 years in a row. I ran it with him, co-driving. And the first year, he was still on his Dana 44 and his 9-inch. And I think we broke like three shafts. And I can't remember if he was on 39s or 37s still, Reds. But I just like, was it 37s?
Yeah.
And I just remember like I was literally running back and forth to camp to get fucking the hub socket, and then to get a shaft, and then to get snap ring pliers. And we were out. I think we were on everything. No, we were on Easy Street at Field and Forest, and just like running back and forth. And I assume you guys know Jim Overly, right?
Yep.
Overly built.
Yeah, Jim was like, because they can't help. He was just up there watching, and he's like, "Fuck, I am so glad I am not your spotter because I would not want to be doing this shit Tyler is." And Kevin's like, "That's why I invite him, so I don't have to fucking run anywhere. He does all my bitch work for me."
Dude, Overly is another fucking can of worms too.
He's a fucking jackass. He is such a jackass.
He is
Fucking
such
Jim.
a fucking jackass, but he is such an amazing motherfucking jackass.
Oh my god, yeah.
He was at Richie's property and like just fucking spooling that 304 to the goddamn moon like it was
my
no
God.
big deal. Backs into his brake line, smashes the brake line off, and he's like, "I've got a BB in my like little ammo can or whatever the fuck it was, just for this." Slams it into the brake line, spools it, sitting there like trying to get it going with the front dig going, blows the rear drive shaft, runs out, grabs parts in the part or in his. Because it's Overly, he can never have a normal tow rig, so he takes that.
Oh yeah, it's like whatever he finds at the junkyard that week is his tow rig.
Takes that down to Advanced Auto, comes back with a U-joint, pounds it in the woods, slams it back into gear.
Oh, you're forgetting, he went out for lunch while he was gone, too. He got food. He was gone for like an hour and a half, 2 fucking hours.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Comes back, hits it full of hatred, and then just moseys out of the parking lot like it's no big deal, puts it on the trailer, and just like airsoft BB in the rear brake line.
Jim is like the most underprepared yet overprepared guy ever. But like he just hates to have nice stuff. Like anything that's nice, he sells it.
Huh.
It's freaking wild.
So back to the racing, though. What was the biggest thing for you getting into it?
Probably the freaking work that actually goes into these things. Obviously, like from rock crawling and shit, you like literally tighten bolts when the nut falls off on the trail. You don't,
or you shear the bolt off,
right? Yeah. But like you never
had that happen.
Like before a trip, you never go through and torque all your bolts or paint mark your stuff or check like your adapters or your drive shafts. You never look at any of that shit. You literally power wash half of it from the trip before and then put it back on the trailer. And like
are you
raising.
Telling me that's the secret to having a reliable rig?
Essentially, yeah. And then it'll like when something breaks, it tells you it's broken.
Yes, it does.
So. Like with the Rzrs, I mean, you probably don't have to, but to be successful in racing, like it literally comes apart to a bare chassis every single race. So I pretty much manage and run like a professional racing team also out here. They do the Best in the Desert and Legacy and stuff like that. So we race in Nevada and California and Utah and stuff like that with them. So I prep that whole race car for every race. And I mean, that thing gets all new hubs, all new brakes, all new axles, every bolt on the whole thing. Every race, the motor comes out, the trans comes out, the front diff gets ripped apart, everything inspected. The chassis gets sandblasted in a few spots to check for cracks. I mean, like literally from top to bottom, it gets stripped. Everything's all, Zeus fastened together with quick pins and stuff like that. I mean, they're as close as you can come to like a professional race car without spending, $500,000 on something.
Yeah.
So this might be a stupid question, but do you ever just take them out and have fun?
I do. So I bought that new one, like I was saying a couple of months ago. My girlfriend and I bought it, and that's like our, quote unquote, like play cars. That's what we'll take around town and go out on trail rides and stuff with, which is awesome. And like I said, I got almost 2,000 miles on it. And we haven't even had it for a year yet. But I just did kind of stupid me. I'm still like the teenager in me. There was a race in Glamis, which is in California. And if you've never gone, you have the opportunity, you freaking have to go there. So it's the Glamis Sand Dunes or Imperial Sand Dunes. It's where like Blake Wilkie and all them do all like their video shoots and shit.
I've seen a bunch of videos from there.
So it's literally I've wheeled a ton, I've driven a ton of stuff, I've done a ton of like crazy stuff. It is the wildest driving experience you'll ever have in your entire life. And we went out there last year for the first time ever, and I fell in love with it, but my girlfriend was like, this is the fucking coolest thing we've ever done before. So we just had, our play car used to be just a naturally aspirated 2-seater. And everyone we were with, it was actually the people who owned the company she works for, invited us out. We went out there with them, and they all had turboed cars. So they're up near 200 horsepower, and we have 100, and you're pulling these super long hills, and we were just running out of power. So we ended up selling that after like our first trip out there, because we just fell like right into it. Like, this is fucking it. This is awesome. So we sold that car, and I put an order in for a brand new Razor. Had to wait like 6 or 8 months to get it. Got it. I did a cage on it, lights and suspension and seats and all that kind of stuff in it. Just kind of like the normal safety stuff you have to do to them if you're going to be driving fast.
Yeah.
Tuned it, and ignition coils, and like just everything you could do to them, really. So it's stock. That one was 181 horsepower, and now it's like 215-ish. And it's so ridiculously fast. So we went out there. This year was our first year with it out to dunes. We went out there twice. We had to put bigger paddles on it because we were literally blowing through our paddles. We had so much power. Like, we would just sit there and spin all 4 tires in 4-wheel drive. Put bigger tires on it, went out there, had a blast. And then Red Bull came out, and they said that they're going to put on a race out there. They've never done it before. I don't know if you guys have seen, they've done these events like kind of throughout the United States this year. That's called like a hare scramble. They did one in Tennessee and I think in Pennsylvania.
I saw something on the Facebook about it.
I don't know if
so it was this past summer they did it.
Okay.
So they were doing it in Glamis, and Glamis has been around like forever. Like, the guys at work who are like, in their 60s used to go there when they were kids, like in their Volkswagens and all that kind of shit. So people have been going there forever, and there's never been like an organized race there. And Red Bull was going to put one on. And I was like, fuck, maybe I should do that. Like, that'd be kind of fun. Not really knowing like how it was all going to work. Well, come to find out, it was like professional athletes, like Red Bull sponsored, and like NOS Energy Drink sponsored, and Polaris sponsored, and all these sponsored riders were out there racing. And I was like, oh, fuck, like, I have no competition at all to these guys. Like, I just got this essentially stock car, and I've only been racing for about a year. Well, so this was 2 weekends ago, I ended up going out there, and I just entered the sportsman class, not the pro class. And there's actually a video Red Bull released a couple days ago of the event, and it was kind of cool. They set it up like motocross. So there was heat races and last chance qualifiers and stuff like that. I was in the first heat race, and I was in first place about halfway through all the laps, and I came over a sand dune doing about 75 or 80 and clipped the top of the next dune with my rear tire, and I ended up rolling down the entire dune, from passenger side to roof to driver side onto my wheels back to my passenger side. For probably about 35 times I rolled all the way down to the bottom of the dune.
Wow.
I wear full face helmet, fire suit, fire shoes, gloves, all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
I was in first, so I usually have my visor flipped up with just sunglasses on. My sunglasses flew off, so I had sand like buried in my eyes, so I couldn't even open my eyes during any of this. So I'm just like, clamped onto the steering wheel as hard as I can, trying not to let my hands go out. I mean, we have the window nets and all that stuff, but ended up rolling the car. So a bunch of the course workers came down, rolled me over. Like, I thought I had a concussion. I was like, no, I'm good. They asked me my name and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, which way is the fucking course? Like, I don't give a shit about anything. Like, there's no oil or gas on the ground. I'm good. Like, no, everything's dry. So they told me like what dune to go over. And it was kind of like nothing I've ever done before. Right. So like, I don't know if you guys remember in like older video games, like racing ones, they'd have like Ballard racing. So you'd race from like point to point, and you'd like kind of be able to go whatever way you want to go. Mm-hmm. That's kind of how it was set up in the dunes.
ATV versus MX Unleashed back in the day.
Exactly.
The checkpoint racing.
Exactly. So that's what it was, right? And I've like, no one really does that kind of stuff. So it was the first time I've ever even like attempted to race like that. I've always been at like actual race tracks or tracks out in the desert with GPS files and stuff. So you just had to focus on this Ballard they had and kind of, judge your way through the dunes. I mean, these are 300 foot long dunes you're going up and down and crossing over and transferring into and everything. So I ended up rolling all the way down, got flipped back over, got back on course, and I was just like putting the hammer down, trying to drive as fast as I could, like 2 wheels in every corner. And keep in mind too, they changed the rules for this race. You weren't allowed to run paddle tires, so every person out there is running paddles, except for this race you couldn't. So everyone isn't used to how their car handles and stuff on just normal dirt tires.
Yeah, that's funny.
So there was people flipped over and shit, and there was like literally whole front ends of cars, like all A-arm shocks ripped right out of the car, everything all over the place. So I was like, fuck, like I actually might be able to like get a decent position. I think there was 16 people in my starting line.
Yeah.
So I was just going as fast as I could, and I ended up being on the last lap, and I saw the guy in front of me, and I was like, I just need to pass this guy. I drove as fast as I could. I ended up passing him like 50 foot before the finish line, which put me in contention to go into the main event. So I got out, and I was like, holy shit, like that was fucking crazy. My girlfriend's screaming and thought I died, and everyone else was freaking out and shit. And I'm like, I'm good. Look down, and one of my trailing arms is like literally bent in half on my car. And I'm like, oh fuck, like this kind of sucks. Like, won't be able to race. It was driving kind of weird, but I was just trying to make the best of it to finish.
Yeah.
So the trailing arm is essentially how it, that's what all your rear suspension is tied into.
Yeah, and
so that's
it's
how
a
you
really
adjust
long
your
little. We saw a bunch of them when we were at Harlan. Which is kind of wild because you don't see them rock. Like the way they rock crawl is very strange. Like they were going.
Yeah, they literally just
den, and they just hammer it like belly out.
Full throttle assaults all the time.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
So I end up finding like another guy who races the same car as I had a spare arm. So I threw that spare arm on and went out into the main event, and I ended up getting third place in the main event actually. So that was pretty cool for like my first year. I ended up being on the podium at like a Red Bull sponsored race.
And this is the thing you went to, did you say?
Like 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
Yep.
That's
so
awesome,
I ended up winning like a whole toolbox, like a Boxo toolkit and a bunch of money and stuff like that, which was pretty awesome. But what sucked is that was like our play car that I rolled 30 times on the dunes. So like the roof is the cage is good on it. I got to do a new roof on it and all new plastics and stuff like that. But yeah, that was pretty wild. And then the weekend after that is when I had my awards for that series that I run in and got first place in my series for the year.
So I'm not asking this to be rude, but was that through more consistent first places, or was it like a F1 style point system where consistently placing in the top ranks will eventually edge you out to the top? I just don't know how that racing works.
It's kind of both. So I'm trying to think, almost all the races you race Saturday and Sunday, and they're like 40. I think they're usually between 40 and an hour long. And
I give you props for the commitment.
Dude, that's literally nothing. An hour of racing.
I mean, I guess I'm just used to the shit boxes where it's like, oh, yep, pop the Dana 60. Let me go and pick up another set of shafts next weekend, and I'll throw in a set of 1480s and shit like that. So the idea of going through full-blown racing for 2 days in a row when I'm used to trail
yeah, and that's
totally different.
That's why the prep is so important, right? Like, you can go out there and just like trail riding, right? You put your front tires on the first ledge and you get into it and you blow a ring gear and you're like, well, fuck, now I'm done. Which is okay, right? You put it on the trail and you go home. But for this racing, like, you're spending a couple $1,000s, right? So you don't want to spend all that kind of money. You're not going to get your money back.
You're committed. You've got to, right?
So you're like, yeah, it's a lot of money to race. But it's even more money if I spend that money and I don't prep my car right and it breaks right away.
Yeah.
Because, when I blew up at Harlan, it was no big deal. It was just like, all right, the parts will be at O'Reilly's tomorrow morning. I'm going to hop in with Graham. Or I'm going to hop in with Curtis.
Yeah, I was broken. Oh, no, I guess I wasn't at that point. Soon
The
after.
first time.
Yeah.
The second and third time, not so much.
So it's a lot more like prep goes into it. Like I said, in regards to trying not to break.
Yeah.
Because you're down, right? So at every race, like I was saying, I think it's 30 points, right? If you get first, and then it's like 25 for second, and then 17 for third, and it goes down from there. And there's some races that are double points and stuff like that, but a lot of the races, like I said, are Saturday and Sunday. So you want to drive like 75-80% on Saturday with trying to stay in first place, and then you can drive 90-95% on Sunday because you have a couple of weeks to get your car fixed if you do break something.
Yeah.
The beginning of the year, I had horrible fucking luck. It was my obviously my first year racing. I built the whole car myself. Really, I was going through belts a lot, so that's like probably the biggest complaint with UTVs is that they blow belts. It's like a snowmobile transmission. It's CVT.
Okay.
So it gets hot in there. Obviously, you're on and off the throttle, so those sheaves are opening, closing, opening, closing. There's a ton going on in there. They get to 240, 250, and the belts will start blowing. And then you blow a belt. You have no drive, right? That's what connects your engine to your transmission. You got to pull over, pop the cover off, put a new belt on, and the belts when they blow, they kind of wrap, it looks like a birdhouse essentially. It's all wrapped up in itself and all that shit.
Yeah.
You got to pull all that out and then put a new belt on and go from there. I just had a ton
How long are you down for a belt?
Honestly, it kind of all depends on how it breaks. Like a bad belt break, that shit's wrapped all over the place. It could be 20 minutes. Like a quick one, maybe 5 or 6 if you have all the tools ready.
That's insane.
Yeah, so there was actually one race I was racing in Lake Havasu, at like a short course style, so like more of a motocross style track, and I was in first place like 3 times in one race. I would get into first place and then blow a belt, pull over, everyone would fucking pass me, put a new belt on, get back into first place, and then blow another belt. I just had horrible luck like that for the first couple of races of the season. And once I slowly started getting everything dialed in and figure out, I was getting first and seconds pretty consistent. I ended up getting COVID, which it was nothing bad. It was just super mild. But of course it was one of my last races of the year. And the second place guy was super close in points. And the race was Saturday and Sunday. I didn't go Saturday night. I got a negative test and I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna go, because if I don't go, I'm literally gonna lose. He's gonna go into first place in points, and this whole season will be just a bust. So I ended up going up there just
terrible
for the day.
Second place.
Well, I was I just wanted to. I put so much money and work into it. I just wanted to get first place my first year. So I ended up bombing up there on Sunday. No one knew I was coming. I showed up and they were like, oh, this fucking guy. And I ended up taking first place on that Sunday also, which put me back in the points lead. And then I had that one last race to do. That was about a month ago. And I over prepped the car in hopes it would stay together because it was the longest one of the year. Like I said, it was about 150 miles. And I just hammered down. I ended up getting third overall, right? So like I was saying with the horsepower, my car is only about 100 horsepower. So the overall result is for every single UTV out there racing, that could be on an unlimited RZR that has 400 horsepower and 40 inches of suspension travel. I think it was third place overall. I ended up getting that race. So out of 47 RZRs or whatever was there, I ended up getting third, which was pretty awesome for my last race. I was pretty happy with that. But yeah, it's a ton of fun. It's a totally different animal than rock crawling for sure. I hadn't really thought about rock crawling too much since I got into them, just because they're so freaking time consuming.
Yeah, that sounds like it would take up.
1, 2. I got 5 of them at my house right now. 5 RZRs. And then I got I ended up building. I had a 2014 Dodge that we used to move out here, and it's a 4-door long bed. I ended up taking the whole bed off that thing, and I built a full chase truck out of it. So it's got an 8-foot utility body and the whole rack that goes up and over the cab with storage. and spare tires mounted on the outside and lights and all that kind of shit. So for that team that I pretty much manage and race with and for, I prep their whole car, and I also run like their chase crews and stuff like that. So we do like big races, 600-700 miles at once. We'll race. So you're in the car for, the last one we did was the Mint 400, and the driver was in the car for about 11 hours total, like from start to finish.
Wow.
Yeah. On the note of that, the truck that you're talking about, I can't wait for my Cummins build because I want to put dual 8x170. I want to put Super Duty axles under it because firsthand just how shitty second gen axles are.
Oh yeah.
So put 8x170 axles under the truck and then put dual mounts so I can have a 35 spare on there, but also bolt Jeep spare on there, and just like super nice flatbed setup for doing similar, not quite the same, but
Yeah.
kind of a cool idea for a tow rig for my shit box.
Yeah, I just had, like, for the first couple of races, even for just my personal racing, I was just using like those totes and shit from Home Depot. And then like Sunday afternoon after my race, like shit would be everywhere. I had parts everywhere and tools everywhere, and it was just a fucking mess. And I'm like, I've always wanted a utility body on my personal truck because I drive a service truck every day for work. And they're so useful. So I ended up building that whole truck out, and that was like the freaking best thing I've done. And then driving around town, everyone's like, what the fuck do you use that thing for? Because I got like a 3-inch Carly like long travel kit on it now, and 37s and all that kind of stuff, and the whole body's wrapped and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So it just looks freaking sick going down the road too.
And it's like daily driver get to work sort of thing as well.
Yeah. Well, we use it for chasing the races. So I'm in the truck for 15, 16 hours at a time, and we got intercoms and radios to talk to the car and antennas and shit all over the place.
Yeah, so it just looks insane.
Yeah,
On the
yeah,
street,
it's
just
crazy. Right, and it's funny, like back in New England, right? No one even knows what a freaking chase truck looks like. You come out here and literally on my driving around for work, I'll see like 2 or 3 every single day because it's just desert racing is so popular out here.
Yep.
But yeah, so I have that truck, and then I actually ended up getting it was my grandfather's old truck I wanted like my whole life. Once he passed away, my mom sent it out here for me. So that's a 01 24 valve regular cab long bed. I ended up lifting that thing a couple months ago. That's on 37s too. And then my girlfriend still has her Jeep. I sold my rock crawler about 8 months ago. To actually just one kid I met out wheeling one day. We ended up staying in contact, and he's like, we want to sell that thing? And I actually just posted it for sale yesterday. So yeah, let's make a deal. And he actually used, it's kind of funny. He paid me like halfway for it, and he ended up getting married, and he freaking conned his wife into using their wedding money to pay for the rest of the buggy.
That is amazing.
They came here and picked it up, and she was with him, and he's like, yeah, I don't really want to talk about how we got the money. And she's like, yeah, let's not bring it up again. But he's been loving it. Have you guys ever heard of the Arizona Undertakers?
No.
So if you get free time, you got to YouTube them, dude. They're like the gnarliest motherfuckers out there. Like there's like a stock rig to them is like a red dot buggy on 43s. Like they have the most insane shit
partying
ever.
with them now.
Who is that?
Your rig's out there partying with them now.
Yeah. So the kid is like having a grand old time. He sends me pictures all the time, and he's like, dude, this thing is so good. It works so well. And I'm like, I don't know. I was literally a fucking idiot when I was building that thing. There's no reason. There's zero reason that thing should work. But I mean, I've had that thing 85 degrees climbing rocks with the suck downs in, obviously. And it just goes I don't understand. I definitely don't have any of the links right. I don't have any of the geometry right. Nothing. Wherever shit fit, I just burned it in and didn't even use a tape measure for any of it.
That's
but the fucking thing just works and works and works. And I mean, in all the years of wheeling it, I literally think I broke a front drive shaft, and that's it. That's all I ever broke in probably 5 years of wheeling that thing. I mean,
sorry.
The only other thing is fuel pumps and shit like that, but that's just because I externally mounted it like an idiot.
Yeah, and like I was about to say, the best compliments I've ever gotten on my rig from K-pop. I don't agree with everything, but your numbers are good.
Yeah.
From Curtis, holy fuck, this thing's a cheap bitch, but I like it. And from Timmy, quit overthinking it. Your numbers are fucking good and just run that thing. I've seen what it can do.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, that's what it comes down to. Like, yeah, you can sit there for fucking days and days and days, right? But you get it done and you're out wheeling, right? And yeah, you might not be able to do this obstacle or this or whatever, but you're out there wheeling, and it's better than the guy who's had a rig in the garage for 3 years building it. You know what I mean? Because by the time he's done with it, none of his friends. What was that?
Graham is the master of getting the rig out there and wheeling.
Right, and that's what you got to do.
Yeah, it's always the grand plan at the start, and then you're like, no, fuck it, I just want to go back out, so we're gonna slap it together quickly, and as right as we can possibly make it, and it'll work.
And I know. Go ahead.
I took some of that, and I was surprised by what it can do, and like how well behaved it is on the road.
Yeah, and so that's like the other thing, right? That what kind of the big deciding factor to get rid of my buggy is Jeff Valerie from Eastern. I got pretty close with him, and he had a. Have you ever seen his rig before? Do you know who he is? He's got like that.
He's
CJ,
the guys that
the green CJ.
Was it the green CJ that was on like the 40s that was really clean and linked?
Yeah. No, it's always been leaf sprung.
No, I'm sorry. I'm thinking about the guy with the burnt bronze moto medals. I think it might be on a TJ.
Oh, yeah, and that's not a Cameron or something.
Yeah, that rig also always stuck out to me as a nice rig.
Yeah. No, Jeff just had, it was literally his, I don't even know how old Jeff is, like probably almost 50. It was his daily driver in high school. It's a YJ, and he's literally had it his whole life, and it's on tons, like hydro assist. It's on, I think, KR3s now. And he works in Hartford, and he lives in Glastonbury, and he literally like will daily that thing on stickies on the highway to Hartford every day, and like he'll go out wheeling all the time. Like it's just such actually, when we went back for Kevin's memorial, I borrowed one of Eric's rigs, and he brought his buggy up, and we wheeled field and forest for 3 days, and like it just does everything so well. And he's like, buggies are cool, but he's like, I'd much rather have this thing where I can go on the highway and take my wife and my son out to get ice cream, and then go. You know, I can't do every trail here, but I can do 95% of them. You know.
Yeah.
Yep.
That right there is why I said, you know what? I'm going to restore my dad's old truck instead of building a buggy. My rig is almost at that point.
Yeah, and honestly, dude, like I just got burnt out of wheeling, and I know Kev was the same way, and a lot of people do. Like we were going every weekend or every other weekend, and it's super fun, and you know, everyone you go with, it's a blast. But after a couple of years, you're like, I've done every fucking trail here. I've done, you know, I know everyone. Like it's time to change it up a little bit, whether that's going back to like, you know, an XJ on 33s, or it's going to a side-by-side or whatever. It just kind of is like the evolution of off-roading, right? You're kind of never happy with what you have, and you're always trying to change it.
Yeah.
The funny thing for me is I'm happy with where I'm at now, but I picked up competitive shooting, and that bug right there is like not quite the same as an RZR, but it's definitely a different path to go down.
Right.
And my girlfriend wants an RZR now because of the time that we spent at Harlan, with Graham and, you know, Jason Ramsey and Colin Bates and everything. And she saw the RZRs. She wants to go down that path. So, like, between those hobbies, I don't know where I'm going to end up. I just know that I'm going to fix my dad's truck and keep my Cherokee.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, you can get a Rzr for, you know, 10 or 15 grand and older. You don't need a fucking turboed one and shit like that for trail riding. You know, you don't need to do 100 through the woods. You're gonna fucking die if you do that.
Even that, she's going to be the one driving it. I'm not giving up on my Cherokee.
Yeah.
So,
Well, dude, they're so fun, right? Like my new one has a full Rockford Fosgate sound system in it. Like it has navigation, it Bluetooths to my phone. Like we literally can turn on some fucking Cardi B and go ripping around town and do like whatever we need to. And like it's just so we got intercoms in there. You got the cooler in the back, like, and the thing can do 100 down a dirt road, and you can be driving it with one wheel. Like my new one, it literally has electronic shocks on it, so I can adjust how it rides from my steering wheel.
That's insane.
It has, yeah, it has electronically controlled compression dampening on it, and the new ones have compression and rebound dampening on it, so it's even better.
You know, that's getting way too fancy for a dude that lives in a single wide.
Well, I live in a double wide out here, so I mean,
you're twice as fancy right there. That's the Cherokee that I've got to fucking an RZR right there.
But no, dude, they're freaking, like I said, I love rock crawling and stuff like that, and I'll always, I'll have something to go off roading in. That's why we keep her Jeep. But it's so fun, and the thing with it is you can go out with way more people, you can cover way more ground, and out here that's really what you want to do. Back home there's not a lot of ground to cover. Yeah. Like I said, out here I can do a 115-mile loop literally from my garage door. Get in the Rzr, start it, hit the garage door opener, and pull back in at 12:30 at night and go to bed.
So, I know I've beaten this to death on other podcasts, but for me, the thing that was wild was my time at Harland, where going to Railbed, we did more miles on our Jeeps than we would do in a full day of wheeling just to go watch some idiots party.
Right. And that's how it was at Windrock, and it was cool for a little bit, but like once you start riding like that, you want something with music in it. You want something with comfortable seats, with comfortable harnesses, with like some sort of airflow in it and shit like that. And being, mostly full bodied, you still have that, luckily.
Yeah.
But yeah, like being a tube buggy, man, it's fun and you don't really give a shit about it, but it's really not practical for like riding out here or, doing a large quantity of trail riding.
So I don't know if you listened to the podcast where we had Brad on, and we were talking about that, but like
Brad Lovell?
Not Brad Lovell. Brad from Trail Trash. Really, really fucking salt of the earth dude. But we were talking about it, and like, I feel like I need to do coilovers up front now. I need to buy a Milwaukee amp, or not an amp, but like a Bluetooth speaker at least, so I can get some radio going on in there, because my whole fucking XJ, the interior's just falling out because it's a Cherokee. And you know what happens when you wheel them? They start vibrating, and to rip every vibration out, you end up with a dashboard, and that's all that's left. Yep. You're lucky that you've got door panels still.
Yeah.
So, like, that's where my rig's at. But at least I've got the airflow still, because I've got, the heater controls and all that. Once I get the up-travel situation figured out up front, I'll be happy with it. But I wouldn't want to do 115 miles off-road in it. I couldn't.
Right. And that's what, like, moving out here, right? Like, there's definitely rock crawling still. Like I said, when we first got out here, we got into it a little bit. And actually, Eric Swenson and Todd Tomei came out here last winter. They freaking trailer.
Fucking salt of the earth, too.
Todd's fucking badass. Dude. They came out here and spent a couple days at my house with me, and we went out crawling in there. So he had his CJ buggy, and Eric brought his new Samurai buggy, that 4-wheel steer one.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So we did a bunch of trails out here in those, and they said the same thing. They're like, this is awesome, but if we moved out here, these are not like the rigs you want. Like, you want, I hate to say it, but you want like a fucking JK on 42s, because that's like the ideal rig, right? You can have a cooler, and you got AC, and you got doors, and those things are stupid capable.
Yep. And they're comfortable.
And they are, right? Yes, because a lot of the stuff out here is fire roads, right? Like, if you're in a stock freaking vehicle, you're just like, you feel the ball joints pushing out of the fucking axles and everything else just rattling apart on them. So if you get like a built vehicle, That's just like what you want out here. The AC is the biggest thing, man. Like I can't tell you how many trips we've done in the Jeeps. Like when we are still pretty nude out here, where we're trying to drive home on the highway and like we're literally boiling like a freaking egg because it's just so hot and just not fun, you know?
Yeah.
So another thing that I noticed was when I put my seats in, suddenly I started packing towels to put down on those fucking Corbeaus because the Corbeaus are comfortable and they keep you from fucking slamming into the door or into the roll cage, but you fucking soak your ass to them.
Yep.
Yeah, you got a sweaty ass.
Yeah. I'm a fat kid from New England. What do you expect?
So it's like another like crazy thing with the Razors, right? So like we've always just ran stock seats and you're like, oh, that's good. And you get suspension seats in your rig and you're like, wow, this is fucking awesome. I had suspension seats in my first Razor and I'm like, these things are the biggest pieces of shit. And like now everything we have has like full carbon fiber seats in it. Because the issue with suspension seats is once you start going fast, is you're still moving in the seat, so you're compressing your spine every single time.
I read about that with the King of the Hammers guys.
Yeah,
the
so like
seats, I think, right?
Yeah, they're all kind of
one
the
of the
same.
guys had a fucking tailbone fracture from it.
Yeah, because so like suspension seats are comfy, right? And you think they're like a huge upgrade, which on a trail rig, they're badass.
But
yeah, but like when you start going fast, dude, like God, those things fucking hurt. Because your harnesses, you want to hold yourself to that seat to not move, and that suspension in that seat is keep like letting you move still.
So I gotta ask, like the reason I like the suspension seats is when you're doing the dumb shit. It helps to like soften the blow from when the frame rail hits that boulder that you're coming over, or you go over and you end up on your side. It's like a gentle fall into the side of the seat. Is it just the speed that makes it so that it's not why you'd want to have a suspension seat?
Yeah. So dude, the suspension on these things is so dialed. Like, if any of you guys ever come out here, I'll have to bring you for a ride. Or if you get the chance to ride in like an actual race car or something, you got to go for it. Even like a fully built Ultra 4 car. I mean, you get in one of those things and it's like nothing. You're going to fucking sell everything you own to try to afford one of those things. Because it's just such a game changer. And like I said, once I got in my first Razor, I was like, I thought my buggy rode good and it was a fucking piece of shit. You know what I mean? Compared to a stock Razor. Yeah. And just the capability is just so high on these things. And you can only go up, right? So like that new car I bought has that electronic suspension. I got dual rate springs on it, and a lot of the same stuff that is in rock crawling carries over to racing. The Razors with crossover rings, with shock load, with the angle of your shocks, where they're mounted, how they're mounted. Spring rates, and there's just so much of that stuff that goes into it. And on top of that, you have all valving. And with internal bypassing, you have all sorts of different valving inside of the shock, degressive pistons and all that kind of stuff you can deal with, which will essentially, if you have a guy that knows what he's doing, you can eliminate like all that chop where you'd want that suspension seat to absorb that little stuff. You can make your suspension absorb all of that, and you could be driving literally one-handed down like a super rough road and hardly feel anything.
So, are you going to be going to King of the Hammers?
Dude, so that's like one thing that I don't know. I'd love to. I haven't had any. I don't have time to do any of this shit, right? I freaking moved to Arizona. I haven't even been to fucking Moab yet. Like, I wanted to go to Moab my whole life, and now I live 7 hours from it, and I haven't even gone yet. And same with like Sand Hollow. I have friends that go to Sand Hollow, and I haven't gone yet. I haven't gone to KOH. There's just so like I want to go out wheeling in New Mexico.
By the way, New Mexico is fucking insane.
That place is so weird though.
El Paso, and the wheeling out there is wild when you're used to New England trail riding. Yeah. But also, what's the closest big city to you without giving away your fucking
Phoenix is south of me.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm just north of Phoenix, like 45 minutes or so. But yeah, I'm like one of these days. So with the Rzr, right? We go away for the whole weekends and racing. So I end up buying a toy hauler out here. So I end up selling another freaking super long story, kind of short. One of my races, we were coming home. I had like an open deck trailer. Some fucking lady T-boned me, totaled my trailer out, and like literally cracked the chassis on my Rzr somehow. I don't even know how. Broke the sway bar mount off and got all that fixed. Ended up selling my trailer after I got the money for it from her insurance company and buying a toy hauler. But like one of the downfalls to that is I don't have a trailer for the Jeep for her Jeep anymore. So if it's somewhere we want to go, we got to either drive it or like try to borrow a trailer from one of our friends out here or something like that. And we only have a couple friends that still like go Jeeping out here. And when they go for like a fucking week. And I take so much time off for just racing these stupid Rzrs. I can't take like another fucking week off to go Jeeping.
Yeah.
So on another side note to that, just let me know when is good. But I just looked up the cost of a round trip flight, and if it's not around a holiday weekend, it's $280. So
Yeah, it's
I would
pretty
be
cheap.
totally down to go and do some goon shit for a weekend.
You should try to come out here for one of the races.
Yeah, like you just have to let me know for $280 fucking round trip. Like I can't.
Yeah,
That's like I can't say no. For me to go back home to Connecticut is $1,000, but for me to fly from Chattanooga to Phoenix is $280. Fuck,
that's
dude,
wild.
I can't argue that. Like,
Yeah,
I
I'll
would
have to plan I'll have to plan like a good weekend of riding out or something like that, and have you come out and we'll put some freaking miles on that thing. Go out with some buddies and camp out for the night or something in the middle of nowhere.
as long as you're cool with me drinking some IPAs while we're fucking bouncing around through the desert,
man.
I am totally down with that because
I'd have to bring you to Glamis, actually. I think that's like the best bang for your buck, dude. Like I said, you will literally fucking shit your pants.
I probably
Like, it's-
will, and I'm used to fucking feeling in New England.
Like, it's like, I just wish everyone could experience it. Like, my girlfriend's parents, they love like the Rzrs and stuff like that. They go in them and we go out trail riding when they're out here. But like, I want to get everyone to the dunes that I can because it's just such a unique experience. Like, you're driving at race pace, right? So you're doing between like 40 and 70 through these sand dunes that are hundreds of feet tall, and you'll be cresting over the top of a dune, and it could be flat or it could be a 200-foot drop on the other side. And you have no idea until half your car is already over it.
Yeah.
It's fucking
it's just-
wild.
Dude, like, it's such an adrenaline rush, and it's really scary out there, right? There's so many people that, like, Thanksgiving, we were out there for the whole weekend. We literally watched a guy pass away right in front of us. Like, he rolled his car, didn't have his helmet on, hit his head in the roll cage, and passed away. And that's where like all the safety and stuff comes into play. You just don't just move your car and not put your harness on or not put your helmet on and stuff like that.
Do you guys run Haas's and all that shit?
Like Hans devices.
I'm sorry, yeah, Hans.
Yeah, yep, yeah. So I don't run that well, like trail riding, but all the racing organizations out here, they require full fire suits, full like Hans devices or next gens or whatever, some sort of neck restraint, fire shoes. We have auto fire suppression systems in all of our cars. We have full face helmets. We have intercoms. We have window nets, and literally the best of the best is what you run for safety, right? It's not worth getting. I rolled 35 times and I was literally perfectly fucking fine. I finished the race. You know what? Go roll a Cherokee 35 times and then fucking then put it in dry. Right.
That.
Right.
Yeah, that's going to be a hard pass.
Yeah. You want to spend the money on safe, reliable stuff. Like a lot of the rock crawling, I always tried to get away cheap. And you're like, oh, you're wearing fucking sneakers and shorts and shit like that. And it's not that big of a deal. But when you're doing
dudes get fucking burned up from wearing sweatpants while fucking wheeling and having a fire in the cabin.
Yeah.
I might be a dickhead, but I at least wear jeans when I go wheeling or wear cotton pants just for that reason. It sounds like it's stupid, but there is a little thought process behind that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and actually down near you, have you guys listened to the Total Off-Road podcast before with Steve and Ian?
Yeah, a few times.
From time to time.
Yeah,
we know them.
so the guy, I don't know, you probably didn't listen to it, but there was a guy racing a Razor at the SRS series that his whole car lit up and he was in the hospital for a while with some pretty bad burns and everything
He's
like
out
that.
of Chattanooga. So
Yeah.
right next door to me, that was what was it? It wasn't West Keene, but my coworker.
I think it may have been West Keene. That sounds right.
All right. Well, my coworker, who I would like to have on the podcast, is into the SRRS, but with razors. He just built a one-seater buggy out of his Turbo Series Razor on 35 Swampers.
Yep.
And all that shit. But he's way into that, and like they take their safety shit stupidly seriously because of that. And he, you said $5,300. He spent $2,400 on a 10-gallon fuel cell for that thing.
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
It's wild. And like I was, I know we've talked about it before, but I'm a machinist. I was doing his instead of having like, the normal Razor steering wheel, he went for one of the quick detach.
Yep.
Because this dude is 6'2" and 290 pounds, a Southern boy. So we had to build him a quick detach setup. So we machined it out of aluminum just so he could have a standard vehicle styles quick detach steering wheel, so he could throw it out of the vehicle if he had to get out.
Right.
And the amount of stuff that they do just to make it so that you can get in and out of those vehicles is insane when you're used to the rock crawling background.
Right. And that's what, like, I like the safety aspect of it. And a lot of people just like rock crawl and they're like, I'm not wearing a fucking helmet. I'm not doing this. And I was like, dude, they're so capable and they're so fast. Like literally in a split second, that thing can be on its lid and you're leaking gas, on your back. And it's up in flames.
I met Graham, I rolled my shit box for the first time, and I had shitty harnesses. I had a black and blue imprint of my cage in my side with a spinal issue that didn't get resolved until I went to the chiropractor and was at work, and like fucking it finally just cracked itself free. But I was hurting for a solid 3 weeks after one rollover with shitty harnesses and factory seats.
They were shitty.
That it was Corbeau's.
Those things were shitty.
Yeah, but I learned from that, and after I learned from that, it was Corbeau's with PRP 5 points.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and it's definitely like I never really considered it or gave a shit about safety, in New England with rock crawling and stuff like that. And once you see how bad you can get fucked up or whatever, it's so worth the money to invest in, like you said, 3-inch harnesses. And
I was at the Great American Jeep Rally or Go Topless Day. I forget which one it was. And I was fucking around literally outside of the parking lot, like at the edge of the parking lot on a fucking rock ledge. And I flopped my shit and I was fucked up for 3 weeks because I didn't have any of the good safety shit that goes with it.
Yep.
I can't imagine what a 35 roll incident at 75 miles an hour is going to feel like. I wouldn't want to experience that in my rig because, like you said, my Cherokee wouldn't deal with that, and I've got a stupid Cherokee.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, definitely safety is the fucking... Once you, grow up a little bit, you realize it's worth investing a little bit of money. And I mean, not saying you need to wear a freaking fire suit or anything while you're out rock crawling, but you just got to use some common sense and shit.
Yeah.
But like, because I'm into the tactical shooting and the shooting competition side of things, I'm ending up with a bump helmet. Why not wear the fucking bump helmet that I use for shooting night competitions while I'm in the Cherokee? It's
exactly.
not like, I already own it. What the fuck?
Right.
You're being an idiot if you don't.
Yep. Yeah, it takes one, like you said, even you take a corner wrong and you hit a freaking herb, right? And you bounce up in your seat and you fucking crack your head in the roll cage. Well, who the fuck knows what that can actually do to you? You know what I mean? You might be fine and rub your head and say, fuck, that hurt. Or you get a damn concussion if you hit your head just the right way, you know?
Funny story about that. When I was getting into it, Kish can attest to this. I got a concussion senior year from Ma Bell. I was coming down and I had my head out the window with the window half rolled down, and I bounced off of the window into the top of the window. And I didn't think anything of it, but I had a really bad headache. I went to the doctor for it, and he's like, dude, you have a concussion. You can't sleep
Jesus.
for 4 hours. And, like, I drove home with a concussion, not knowing that I had a concussion.
Right.
And
what about
hit my head?
What about the time at mile marker 2? I jokingly put on one of my helmets that was in the back of the Cherokee.
Oh,
for you to then for you to then jump the Cherokee, leaving a fucking dent in the ceiling from my head.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever been down mile marker 2.
What even is that?
So there's a road called Old Pottsville Road, which is a class 6 road, and we always called it mile marker 2. But there's a couple of sections on there where there's probably a 75-degree, 6-foot tall ledge.
Okay.
Not anything crazy.
Right.
I launched it in first gear and banged it into second gear with the interlock disabled in my Jeep. I had a switch that would shut the TCM off so you could manually shift it in first, second, third. So I did that. I banged it into second, and I hit that at about 20 miles an hour, and we got about 3 to 4 feet of air under the rear axle. And on the descent, he slammed his head into the roof so hard that it like left an impression in the sheet metal of the roof because
with the helmet on.
With the helmet on.
I jokingly put the helmet on because I hopped out of the Jeep. I'm like, hey guys, watch this shit.
Yeah, it's
put
funny
the helmet on,
right?
and then he launches it.
Yep.
Yeah,
Oh my
and like
gosh.
it was bad. Like I landed from that and I felt the impression of the shitty Cherokee seats or the shitty TJ seats, whatever they were, in my ass for a solid fucking week and a half.
Oh my god.
But that's the shit that you do when you know you're 18, 19 and you think that there's nothing that can go wrong, and my Dana 44 is badass.
Yeah, exactly. We've all been there and done that. Yep.
You know, and it's really funny when like talking with you about this shit where we're talking about the Hans safety systems or the safety first and the fire suits and all that. When I remember first meeting you, you were building that blue truggy and you still had swamp ass.
That thing's still sitting at my parents' house.
Is it?
Yeah, it's on cinder blocks. I'm like literally trying to give that thing away and no one fucking even wants it. Not like it's worth anything, but
figure something out.
Yeah. You have to take all the mouse shit that's in it though. You can't leave that. Yeah, that's like the only thing I have left pretty much besides all the other like parts in the shed and stuff like that. But all the other vehicle, actually I think there's a panel van or some shit there maybe still, but
you remember that Kingpin 60 you had and the cut down 10.5 you had?
yeah, actually I just sold that 10.5 Dave Smiley or one of his friends or Somley, whatever his name is, one building that badass brick nose Ford.
Yep.
You know who that is? He just, I don't know if he bought it or one of his buddies bought it or something.
Oh, what the fuck was that kid's name? I worked with him at Clydell. He used to know you, and I can't remember his fucking name, but he had the TJ with Do It for Steve Oaks. It was a silver
Dave.
Oh, God, that kid was
Dave.
a fucking hoot. Good kid.
So that's like a typical wheeling story, right? That kid is like into like lowered Civics and shit. And do you know Mike Kalo? He had the blue TJ. So I met Mike that same Beehive trip, my first trip ever. And me and Mike were like super good friends still to this day. And Dave was really good friends with Mike. He came out wheeling with us once and he's like, this is fucking sweet. He bought a TJ and I think it was a
For that,
40.
'cause I was working with him at Clydell at that time.
Yeah, and he bought that thing, and he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna go out wheeling with you guys." Went out wheeling once, and just got bit by the bug so hard. And he called me like 2 weeks later. He was at Four Wheel Parts in like Pennsylvania or some shit, and he spent like $7,000 there on stuff for his Jeep. Like he bought 3-inch kit and bumpers and rims and tires and like a bolt-in roll cage and an exhaust system and like all this shit. And so we put it on, and I wheeled with him quite a bit. The three of us would go do what's that one in like Sandsfield, Mass? You know those trails up
Mile
there?
marker 2. That was the trails that we were talking about.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. So we used to go up there a whole bunch. That guy built that house like on the entranceway. We end up meeting him at that bar. I can't remember the name of it is.
MJ Tuckers.
Yeah.
Yep. We got
So
drunk there so many fucking times, dude.
So we end up meeting that guy at MJ Tucker's because like Nova, or is it Nova? No. What the hell's the community thing back there?
Novak? No, not Novak.
I can't even remember. It's not
Yeah,
Nova. Anyways, they were like all, no one really knew how to get in there because it was on that guy's property. And I ended up talking to the guy, and he's like, "Dude, I don't give a fuck. Just cut through my yard." He's like, "Just don't do any burnouts or drive like assholes." He's like, "You guys can still use that or do whatever." So we end up going up there all the time, and the dude was like out there chopping lumber and waving. And he's like, "Let me know if you break something. I'll bring my bulldozer out there and pull you out or whatever." But I used to.
So Tyler,
Yep.
put in perspective, that guy's house is built at the mile marker 2 entrance to the trail, and that's why we always called it that. Because right across, literally across the street from his driveway, is the mile marker 2 sign.
Yes.
That's how we always remembered the right place to go in, because there was at mile marker 1.5 and at mile marker 3 logging road entrances that would not connect to Old Pottsville Road, which was that class 6. So we would always call it mile marker 2 because you had to go in at mile marker 2.
That makes sense.
To connect to Pottsville Road.
Did you guys ever do why can I not remember what the big organization that like Eastern and all the clubs are in?
NEA.
NEA, yeah. You guys ever do the property? I think it's Sawmill. That's just north of there or just south of there.
I never made it to Sawmill, but I wheeled just about every other property.
The one guy who did is sick. He's not here. Cody.
Oh, okay.
Has been there.
Yeah, that place is pretty. That place is pretty cool. I don't think we can go there. Well, I can't go there anymore for sure. But I don't think like clubs can go there.
They were
anymore.
just doing some trips there a little while ago.
Oh, okay. I knew it was for sale.
There's 2 of them now.
Depends on. There's 2 sawmills.
Yeah, there's 2 different sawmills. One is good. One, from what I've heard, is not as good.
Yeah, it's more. It's not there's not really obstacles from what I understand.
Yeah.
But did you guys ever go to like? Sorry, go ahead.
I think it's split in 2. I think there's a river or something, and you can't go across the stream or the river or whatever it is during certain seasons.
I know.
So
I know. Last time we were up there, the guy was like selling parts of the property.
Okay.
That might have been it.
Yeah.
Did you ever get to go to Battlegrounds?
Battlegrounds? No, honestly, dude, I kind of just stayed on our own property. Like, I did Badlands a whole bunch. I did most of them, but just not the newer ones.
I'm kicking myself so hard because Kevin invited me to Crazy Eights while I was finishing my roll cage. And my roll cage wasn't quite done, so I was going to the shop that weekend to finish it.
Mm-hmm.
And if I could have known what I know now, I would have just fucking taken the Jeep and not cared about the fact that the C-pillar wasn't totally done.
Right.
Because that property is so hard to get onto now.
It's not that hard. I mean, kind of stinks, right? So Kevin was kind of like, he kind of took over my position once I left as president. It was kind of keeping everything going. Yep. But just everyone is, Jeff kind of took back over, but he's got a full family now and he works a freaking ton, and no one really stepped up from the club to kind of fulfill Kev's position. So I don't think they're doing as much wheeling as they would like to or they used to. But in all reality, dude, there's so many like Rockaholics and all them. There's so many clubs that are booming. If you want to go wheel, you can message Mike or literally anyone on the East Coast, and you can wheel every fucking weekend if you wanted to, and you don't even really have to be in a club, you know?
No, as long as you know the right people, you can just go.
And everyone's super nice, right? If someone listens to this and they're like, oh, I'm on the East Coast and I want to go, rock crawling, they can literally message anyone, and you might not be wheeling, but someone is going to be going out that weekend, and you hook them together, and then they have the best time of their freaking life.
Yep.
We just had or I should say, maybe not but Backyard Built just had a prospect run to Mabel. What was it? 3 weeks ago now?
Yeah.
Something like that.
And they had a bunch of people on like 33s and 35s up at Mabel.
Yeah, it was
just
a bunch of stalker
that kind of shit
with 35s, but it was a blast because there were Dana 30s exploding. Somebody blew a Dana 35. Yeah, it's just like stupid shit, but it's always even that's fun. Like my shit's broken. All the usual crew wasn't really there. We were kind of just watching and.
Hey, I'm sorry I moved to better myself.
And it's it was just a riot. So like
before
stuff, yeah.
Before I moved, I started doing that. The last Jeep I bought, I bought it off like some dude in Waterbury who had no idea what it was. It was on OfferUp for like $3,000 or something. I'm looking at the pictures and I was like, that thing's got fucking Dana 44s underneath it.
Damn.
So I went and looked at it, and it was like the most built TJ that looked stock. Like I think it had like a 4-inch. It had anti-rocks on it. It had Dana 44s. It had 488s. It had Detroits. Like the dude literally had no idea what it was. And he's like, yeah, man, like just ticks and stuff. And I got it, and I literally just put a new exhaust manifold on it because it was cracked like every other Wrangler in the world.
Yeah.
And I drove that thing
every other
for
4-liter in the world.
Well, it was a 2.5. I like to buy good stuff.
Hey, no argument there.
No, they're honestly, I freaking love those 2.5s. I've had probably 15 2.5 Wranglers in my life, and they're just like little. Yeah, you can't go on the highway and stuff like that very much with them, but they're freaking awesome for the price you pay for them. But yeah, I bought that
4-liter number 4 in this Jeep. So
I've never blown a 2.5, but I probably don't have as many miles as you have on that thing. But when I got that thing, I started doing like it was overbuilt for what I was doing, but I still started doing a lot of like the stalker runs and stuff, leading them at like Brookridge and everything.
Yep.
And man, that was so much fun because like you get the new guys out there who literally don't even know how to turn their lockers on. Like it's kind of frustrating at first, but then once you get over it, you're like, it's kind of fun, like bringing people out here and, letting them experience like what their vehicle can do. Cause people are just blown away with what like a bone stock JKU can do,
Yeah. And even like telling these guys, it's like, it's like, if you had a locker, like trying to sell them on the front locker and, getting guys sort of, you're just getting them that first step because the front locker for me, and I think we even talked about it. This is like way back on the podcast. We talked about, like the stuff that gave you the most bang for your buck on your Jeep or whatever. It's just, you're waiting for them to make that decision, the right decision to, just get them totally hooked because it's one thing to wheel open and, it's not doing great. Then you get the locker and have the wheels hook up and just go. You don't even have to do anything.
And that's like the funny thing that when I was into the mud trucks and stuff, right? I mean, I was going to all sorts of mud bogs and I didn't even know what a locker was back then. Like I'd never needed a winch. I didn't need never knew I knew what a roll cage was, but I never even considered any of that kind of stuff. Yeah. When I get into rock crawling, I'm like, why did no kids know what a locker is? Because that would have helped me so much in the mud when literally this one tire was stuck on a stump and I couldn't go anywhere because it was just spinning.
Yep.
But yeah, it's the progression is crazy, and it kind of stinks because it seems like so many people that are getting into the sport now are like jumping right into it and kind of going over the whole open, or they go to 33s and then they go to 35s in a locker, and then they do, a 4-inch lift instead of a 3-inch lift and stuff like that.
Yep.
So they kind of bypass a lot of that. They're buying a fully built freaking LS buggy on stickies and stuff like that, which is great. But literally half the fun of wheeling is kind of growing with your vehicles and learning them as you go along, you know.
And when you bring that up, it's bittersweet for me because I have the vehicle that I dreamed about in high school, a 2-door manual 5-speed Cherokee on 1 tons with a 4-link and a 3-link. But I sometimes look back on the times where I had 35s and my 3-link, and Graham can attest to this. This rig was just dumb then because I would put it in spots that
so
it should
well.
not have
It wasn't
been.
fat. It was just this
Yeah.
nimble little Cherokee that, it was, all the shortcomings of Ducky were not there. So now he could actually drive the thing. You had lockers. That was probably its. It's in a pretty good spot right now, but that was my favorite phase of that Jeep, I think.
Did you ever see that white Cherokee I had for a little bit? It came from Steve Oakes, actually.
Eater. That
Dude,
thing
it was
so
such
clapped.
a piece. It was so clapped, but that thing, I don't even know. I think it was welded in the rear, and we put like a lock right in the front of it on like the baldest 36-inch whatever the fuck they were. And that thing would literally like be behind my buggy all day long. Like, and I think every one of my friends had like 300 miles in that thing. Like they would just wheel it and wheel it and wheel it, and it would break something here or there. But goddamn, like that thing, it's so fun when they're, on 35s in a locker or two, and you're not too worried about body damage, and you just have like a good group of friends you're out wheeling with. There's like not much that beats it.
Yeah.
That was that first season for me.
I'm pretty sure, Tyler, one of the times that me and Luke went over to your place in Burlington here to get axles, someone was actually working on that thing.
Yeah, there was, like I said, like almost all my friends, like quote unquote, own that thing. I don't think I actually got a penny any time it got sold, any of it. But they all like owned it at one point somehow and would work on it and put like 1 out of 4 shocks on it and then go wheel it. And
yeah,
it was just the most ridiculous thing. Yeah.
What was the name of that kid that used to hang out with you that had I think it was a 6.5
Nick. Nick
yeah,
Fulton.
that kid was cool. He was fun.
He was all right. I hung out with. Do you guys remember Alex? He had that fucking lime green, ugly ass second gen with the fucking whale dick stacks out of the bed.
Yep.
I used to hang out with him all the time, and he had that Jeep for a while, and he probably wheeled with me the most out of all of them. Like literally, it was every weekend pretty much. We were in the summer, we were up in Vermont or Mass or something, putting miles in that thing. But they're freaking good. Did you ever see that van that we had? That cabin chassis van that I put on 40s. It was literally 2-wheel drive. That thing was fun. I bought it I had that like utility body camper thing I built, and it was the body. I bought the whole vehicle for just the body on it, and then we were driving it around with like just on the frame rails, and it was a cabin chassis, so it literally had like no back. Right, it was like just the seats and the air was behind you, and that was it. And we had like an extra set of 40s, and we just bolted them on the back and literally just would hold that thing while it had the worst rod knock ever. And we would just hold it floored through the woods, like until your kidneys literally couldn't even like hold you anymore, and you were just about ready to throw up. That thing was that's one still at my house. I'm pretty sure for like 5 years it's been sitting in the woods.
Remember when you guys first got that, you were talking about taking the body off of it, and then you were going to take I think it was the LS out of it and the cabin chassis 14 bolt, and that rapidly
all that
degraded.
All that went to Nick, and I don't even know whatever actually happened to any of that. But yeah, that's like the one last vehicle that's left in there. But I mean, over the years, I can't remember how long I've known you for, but at my parents' house, dude, I probably had 70 to 80 vehicles in and out of there when I lived there.
2014 is 2015 is when we met you, somewhere in there.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I was. Do you guys know who Cody is? That motherfucker used to live up near Sandsfield, Cody Kilmer or whatever his name is.
We know who Kilmer is.
Yeah. So I actually I must have been in high school still, or no, it was after I graduated college. I got kind of not close with him, but I started working with him a lot, towing all of his fucking junk around the States and picking him up. And, man, I brought home so much junk when I was working with him. After working, however many hours a day, I'd get in my truck and go to wherever the fuck he just bought a beat up Comanche from and tow it to his house for him and then drive all the way home.
So that kid was involved with Graham getting his J20.
Yeah, so that yellow, I've got a yellow J20.
Oh, I
got the dump
going
truck
to dump
one.
bed.
Yeah.
I literally picked that thing up for him. I winched that thing onto my trailer
That's
and winched
hilarious.
it off at his house. Yeah, so that thing had like a quote unquote fully built motor in it.
Oh yeah, no, I know all the fucking quirks now.
Oh yeah, he got it home and he's like, dude, the fucking thing was. I'm pretty sure like the main bearings were rusted solid in it or some shit. And the dude sold it to him as it had like this fully built. I don't even remember what for motor was in it, a 304 or something.
I mean, it's got a 360 now. I don't know what's been done.
No, it was a 360.
Okay.
But yeah, and then he had like one of his buddies rebuild the whole thing, and they painted it and all.
Yeah,
Kevin.
yeah.
Farmer
so
Truck
it's
was the kid's name.
It's
or
a
nickname.
basket case. There's some. When I got it, it was an absolute nightmare. I've been slowly unfucking it. The manifold still will not stay tight. It rattles and
That's
loops. I don't know
hilarious.
what's going on. The EFI like barely worked. The thing was running. I have pictures of the headers glowing because the timing was so fucking off that it just. I don't even know how it stayed. I don't know how they even drove the thing because it was just instantly overheated.
Is that a Phytech system on that?
It's the Holly Sniper.
Oh,
That's on
okay.
it now.
Wow.
And the O2 sensor, they literally used. It comes with that stupid gasket plate that you can clamp down.
Oh,
well, they did that,
yeah.
but the gasket got all fucked up, so they welded like half of it, which doesn't
My
work.
God.
You can't weld half of the I mean,
That's so funny. That's
C
hilarious.
minus for
I picked that
effort.
thing
Like
up.
you tried, but yeah, I don't know. I don't care what happens to that motor. I'm gonna throw something else in there if it blows up. But
What are you using it for?
I'm just driving it. It's just a driver right now.
Oh, right on. Does it have like heat and stuff?
I fixed the heat. It didn't have heat to start.
Oh my
it was
gosh!
filled
Didn't he
with
have that thing
leaves.
posted? Didn't he have that thing posted for like 20 grand?
No, it wasn't 20. I got it for 5.
Oh,
And I mean,
okay. That's
honestly,
not bad.
it did run and drive, and I probably could have drove it home. And it's really the frame's in pretty decent shape, so I think
And it's
I made out
definitely
with an
like
okay
unique.
deal. Yeah, it's
Did it-
definitely a eye catcher. It's you don't see very many yellow dump truck fucking Jeep things. It's
I bought a what the hell did I buy out here? I had a 79 Cherokee Chief out here for a little bit that I bought. That thing was with a 360 and 44s and everything. That thing was freaking sweet.
yeah, they're just fun. It's
Yeah. Yeah, they're a good time.
Yeah, it's a different kind of fun from the shitty Cherokees and rock crawler stuff, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's fun driving old shit around for sure.
You
But-
feel every fucking bump. It's
Oh yeah.
the thing drives
Yeah.
like an absolute brick. It's
It's not lifted or anything, right? It's like all stock pretty much.
so it is. I don't think there's any suspension changes, but the cab is actually on a body lift because the way they mounted the dump bed, it sits higher, so I
Oh,
needed to
right.
lift the cab to match the body lines. But other than that,
Gotcha.
I think it's stock.
Gotcha. Right on.
All right, well, we're over our 2.5 hour mark, and I think
I was gonna say I was
at a
looking
pretty
at
good
that.
point to knock it here. So, any closing thoughts, Luke, Richie?
Just said it was a pleasure, Tyler.
Yeah, this has been fun. Our past few have
Absolutely.
been a little shorter. We've had some shorter ones, so it's refreshing doing another 2.5 hour.
It's crazy how fast 2.5 hours goes, man. There's like 1,000 things I was halfway started saying and we moved on.
No, I mean, if you've got more to talk about, we could definitely have you back
It's-
on. This is a riot.
That's crazy.
I mean, we have a
Welcome to the
tradition-
world of the podcast.
Yeah.
We have
Oh,
a
so-
tradition at this point of we'll have a guest on and we'll do their introductory episode, and then we'll have another week where we're running slow on stuff to talk about. It won't be like, hey, you want to come on? And we'll end up with another 2-hour episode of shooting the shit and talking about all the shit that we missed on the last episode.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's wrap the podcast here. Luke, do you got a closing statement for us? Usually you come up with those.
All right, so in this case, don't skimp out on your safety because sometimes when you let a rock crawler behind the wheel of an RZR with 200 horsepower and like half the weight, you end up rolling 35 times. And make sure that you click that like, subscribe, and pass this along to your friends and lock the gate behind you.